Welcome back to the Bourbon and BS podcast. Do not adjust your screen and also don't report us. We took our temperatures and no one's having any issues that I know of that are health related as Dustin coughs. Thank you very much, Dustin. Welcome back. We have gone back to I think that wasn't a joke either. We've gone back to the old format. We're trying it again with some of the new stuff. So for those of you listening to the audio, we welcome you back. It's episode 121. And tonight we've got Nate Hale and Dustin Bovey back in the garage. We've got a little bit of a studio audience. It's less than 10 people, so we're good there. But it's welcome back, guys. It's weird having you guys back in the garage. I've been doing this solo, which is awkward when I get drunk at the end of the night and no one's here. More or less awkward, I don't know.
But now you're probably doing that more during the week too.
Well,
I know I have.
Yeah, I've been on
2 months.
How have you guys been? I want to go over the sponsors here in a second, but just Nate, how you been? I know you've been a part of a lot of the podcasts remotely, so how you been?
Yeah, just busy. I mean, I've never stopped working my day job.
Yeah,
and just now getting back into the shop on some of the days. I miss it. Like I miss the social interaction.
Yeah,
and being cooped up for a couple months, you just start getting really testy.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a short fuse when it comes to people's bullshit. So,
which is seemingly happening more and more.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, Ryan Newman says last time y'all were in the garage, you guys were in winter coats. Absolutely. Yep. Ryan Jones says no hugs for Steve. That's kind of hurts my feelings, but that's all right. Dustin, how have you been?
I think he just doesn't want you to get the virus.
That's fair. Dustin, how have you been? Let's get the pleasantries out of the way here. Go ahead.
I've been good. Just crazy busy with work, which in the retail industry, especially the grocery retail industry.
Yeah.
There's been little to no rest for the wicked. But we're slowly getting back in stock, and some things are going out of stock, coming back. It's an ongoing battle, and so a lot of hours, but at the end of the day, everyone's got to eat.
Everybody's got to eat. That's right.
And got bills.
Yeah. So we're trying this again, and I'm glad that you guys are healthy, happy. What has happened in the quarantine? Let's get everyone caught up. Nate, what's changed in since we were locked down out of the garage here? Anything updates besides not working on the shop? Anything exciting?
Cool. Not personally, nothing at work. Just
all right.
It's
Dustin?
been quiet. They keep pushing the goalposts.
Dustin, I feel like there were some eventful things going on for anyone out there listening. Tell them what happened. Just two highlights that I know of. One low light, one highlight.
Well, the low light was probably 2-3 weeks ago, I guess. What would have been our wedding date.
Mm-hmm.
We actually had to push that back because of everything going on. Now it is next summer, middle of July. So it was a sad time. It was a really, really tough decision, but ultimately, Kathy and I, we both feel we definitely made the right decision on all that.
Good.
Especially considering no one in our wedding has their suits or dresses or any of that.
I was going to, but then, this happened.
Yeah, things kind of shut down. So
right.
Made it a little bit difficult. And then here in the last couple weeks, we got another puppy, another addition to the family.
Right.
So he's come along really well. He's a little ball of fur and energy.
Yeah.
But Cadence really loves him, and that was, ultimately the major goal with that.
Good.
I think Steve can relate.
Yeah, I got a puppy. I can't remember if I told anyone on the podcast, but yeah, we got Francis Crane, named after Francis Sinatra, actually. So he goes by Frank or Frankie. But yeah, he's great, actually. He's great.
He doesn't have blue eyes?
He doesn't have blue eyes.
No, he doesn't have blue eyes. He doesn't.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. I messed up. It's a rescue, so we're good. I do want to thank, and bear with me here. We're working here. I do want to thank our sponsors, Tinder Box at Easton. Tonight we are smoking the Romeo Julieta. It is the Connecticut, Nicaragua. It is a newer cigar from Altadis, which is our other sponsor, our big sponsor here, which we appreciate the support from Altadis to see behind us and behind Dustin there. You can see the whole banner now, which is the Romeo, Julieta, the Monte Cristo, H. Upman, along other brands. So we're happy to have them support us. Josh is going to be coming on. Josh Bentley, who's been on the podcast recently. He's going to be coming on here this month as well. We're going to be featuring another new cigar from them, but we haven't featured this one yet, so I'm happy to do that. And then also BS Cigar Company, which is the second cigar tonight, since we were going to do the new gold blend. Turns out both of them are from the Plasencia family. So that's kind of a cool tie in there. And then also patreon.com. So now that we are back out of this, I have made contact with our guy. And so for actually pretty much everyone in the garage is going to be getting one of the t-shirts I'm wearing. And then we're going to have those available for everyone else. So I'm really happy for everyone's support throughout this. It actually helped a lot get this thing going with me. Doing this, the StreamYard service. So we've been able to do it remotely. We're going to continue to do it in the garage. We're going to do it remotely. So thank you very much. And obviously all the listeners out there, if you guys want to participate or just keep enjoying it, we appreciate it. And also check out the Bourbon and BS community page. Tonight, we're also going to be drinking. Nate brought Trail's End. And is it just, I keep asking, it's just Trail's End. Can I see the bottle?
Yeah, that's it. Just Trail's End.
And then for the topic for part two, I really don't want to go too far down some rabbit holes. We'll see how the whiskey's flowing by then, but it's about accountability. There's obviously a lot of shit going on in the world right now, and I think everyone's worn out, and I can appreciate all sides of everything going on with COVID, with the protests and everything going on with the big two things, depending on what day it is. I feel like we see that, but other than that, it's just everyday life being held accountable and holding yourself accountable. So we'll get into that a little bit as well. But Trail's End says crafted with 8-year Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey and finished in Oregon oak. So we'll get into that. Trail's End. I haven't taken a sip yet, but Nate, you said you did some research on this.
Yeah. So
what are we drinking here?
So the bottle was gifted to me by one of my sales reps back in January. The last couple of years, he's given me a different bottle of bourbon every year, just because there's no other person on my team that he'd rather work with than me.
Right. Oh, that's kind of nice.
And so he picked this up. It's available in Ohio. It's $45.69 a bottle, which is kind of a weird price. $45.69.
Very specific.
It is. They do one batch a year, so it's coming out of Hood River Distillers in Hood River, Oregon. However,
not just a clever name.
Yeah. However, it's sourced.
Okay. Do we know where it's sourced from?
They do not disclose where they source it from.
Okay.
And the only part of the mash bill that they release is that it's around 10% rye. That's the only part of the mash bill. So we know it's at least 51% corn and around 10% rye. That's all you know about the whiskey.
So when it says, I don't know if you know this or not, but I mean, so when it says it is 8-year.
Yep.
So that's obviously the virgin oak, and then you have finished with Oregon oak. Do you have the story on that?
So what they do, so since they're based in Oregon, what they do is they'll take white Oregon oak.
Mm-hmm.
And
is it virgin oak, or do they say?
So they cut it down into staves, and they put the staves into the barrel to finish it.
Interesting.
So it's aged 8 years, and then they put the barrel staves in the barrel to finish it.
Similar to like a Maker's Mark, Maker's 46, or your private barrels. They've got their different 11 stave recipes.
Yeah. And then it's this, like I said, this is the fourth batch that they've done. The first batch was released August 2015.
Yeah.
Then they did one in 2016. They delayed the 2017 release because of the Oregon wildfires that year.
Oh shit. Yeah,
so now,
that makes sense.
So then the next batch came out in 18 and then 19. So this is batch 4 from 2019. And now whenever you purchase a bottle, part of the money from that bottle actually goes back to forestry in Oregon.
That's super nice.
So they're trying to replant, all those oak trees and stuff that got burned up in the fires. And, of course they want to replant any of the ones that they cut down to use for the finishing process.
Yeah.
It's non-chill filtered.
Okay.
Yeah. And like I said, they just don't they just don't release a whole lot out of it or a whole lot about it.
Is this the only variation there is of it?
Yes. Yep.
There's just the one, Trail's End. That's it.
Yep. Now the same company, they also do some other spirits that they release, but this is I think the only bourbon that they do. If anyone is a fan of absinthe, they do the Lucid Absinthe, which is the one that has the like black bottle with the neon green cat eyes.
Yeah. Nice.
So,
well, I mean, this is something I didn't even tell you two, but before we go further into this, I do want, and it's a little out of order here, but I do have a special guest to kind of help us out with the Romeo Julieta, the Connecticut Nicaragua.
Okay.
So I want to bring him on and try this out here. Josh, what's going on, buddy?
What's up, dude?
Gentlemen, what's happening? How are you?
We're good, man. We're good. We're trying it back in the garage. You were wanting to come up, so I figured I'd give it a trial run, but not leave you out. So we wanted to do the Romeo Julieta Connecticut Nicaragua tonight, and I appreciate you taking time out to talk to us a little bit about this blend, because it's not one of the ones that you and I were talking about when you're back up in the garage, which we are absolutely looking forward to.
No, yeah, it was definitely a surprise. I'm definitely looking forward to being there with you. So I'm glad you're giving it a trial run, so I don't get the trial run.
Right.
That's good. And yeah, a nice surprise with the 1875 Connecticut Nicaragua. I'm looking forward to it. Have you guys already lit it up?
Yeah, we've lit it up. Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Let me get this.
Well, this ain't the first time I've
this
smoked
light
this
on
cigar.
this.
It's a good cigar.
Oh yeah.
I feel like this is the Cigar Road Show with him driving.
Hopefully he pulled over.
I'm hoping he did.
I'm sitting at a red light. I'm using all safety precautions. I have my.
Did you say you're at a red light?
in. I'm sitting at a red light. Yes. Yeah.
You're not even
So it is the Road Show.
Perfect.
Yes.
So right now,
Yes.
we're definitely not 6 feet apart, and you are not driving right now while talking on video. Perfect. Yeah, no, this is great. It's a great thing
Hashtag
for
safety first.
Yeah,
Great way
safety
to come back. Great way.
Yeah.
Hey. Why
All right.
not?
So what are we
Why
smoking?
not?
It's Plasencia tobacco, right? We got Plasencia tobacco here.
Plasencia tobacco. Plasencia and Rafael Nadal blended this to go off of the very successful 1875 Nicaragua, which I guess I could say sold it. How I sold it was the Nicaragua was a cigar that a Reserve Real or the 1875 original smoker could enjoy. It was a way that they could enjoy Nicaraguan tobacco, right? And I mean, it's not. How would I put it? It's not characteristic, and this is the orange banded 1875 Nicaragua that I'm talking about. It has the flavors, but it does not have the strength of Nicaraguan tobacco, and so that's why those Reserve Real in 1875. And so then we came out with the 1875 Connecticut Nicaragua, which is the first Nicaraguan grown Connecticut wrapper that is on the premium market.
That's what I love about this.
Yeah.
Just that fact alone is just super cool.
How cool is it to have that first to market, sellable good, if you will. That's pretty cool for us in our industry to have something that, hey, we're first to market with this. Well, that's a pretty cool trait. But then aside from that, let's talk about flavor. I mean, there is a lot of flavor in this, and going into you guys, like who wants another Connecticut? Who needs another Connecticut? Let's put it that way, right?
There are a lot of people with that attitude for sure.
I mean, there are, and then there's other guys who just say, "Hey, no, thanks. I don't enjoy, Connecticut wrapper, any Connecticut seed. Hey, no thanks. Well, listen, give this thing a try and then tell me, guys who don't even like Connecticut cigars, guys who don't like the Reserve Real, guys who don't like the classic with that true Connecticut shade, put this in their hands, and it gives them some of that the characteristics, because you're still getting the characteristics of that Connecticut seed, right? Whether it's grown in the state of Connecticut, whether it's grown in Ecuador, you're still getting just a little bit, but I would say it hypes the flavors up a little bit more, and you get a little bit more of that spice on the sides to the back of your tongue on this.
Do you think that's
What do you guys
from
think?
you think that's from the Connecticut wrapper, the Connecticut, seed wrapper, or you think it's from the filler? Do you know if there's much Ligero in this cigar, or are we dealing with mostly Seco and Viso?
Mostly Seco. Yeah. I don't
flavor
believe.
I think it's coming from.
Yeah.
Yep. But let's talk about that soil that this is grown in. So when I got to go to the Nica Cigar Fest, we got to go through and we got to see Nestor Plasencia growing this Connecticut under cheesecloth, and that was in 2015, I believe. I think I was there.
Ooh.
So
part of
I mean,
Nicaragua?
super. This is Esteli.
Mhm.
Esteli, right outside of his factory. You can see the factory from from the fields. Super cool. He's got the cheesecloth up. I mean, how cool is it first to market that that we had this cigar, and that soil, and what that soil in Esteli. I mean, such rich soil that he was able to grow a Connecticut wrapper.
Well, I love the
That's
fact
super
that it
cool.
was all about them. I mean, that's a ballsy move, obviously, with doing the 4-year plus experiment, and who knows how long they had been working on it. But I heard it was 4 or 5 years. They were like, hey, we're going to try this. We're going to do the cheesecloth thing. We're going to do Nicaragua. We're going to do Connecticut seed, true Connecticut seed, and we're going to try it in Nicaragua instead of doing the Ecuador thing or doing obviously the Valley. And to be able to come out with this, like you said, to market, I don't know. I if it was truly only about 4 or 5 years, and this is like the first real batch of aged wrapper leaf, good for you. Because if it were me, I feel like they've been working on this in like 2005. You know what I mean? Like,
There's always a risk being the first person to come out with something new.
But I mean, that story, I like that story because when you hear about that, if you're into the cigar side of things, it's cool. Like we're drinking the Trail's End, and this is based out of Oregon. I don't know if you're familiar with that, Josh, but so we're doing the Trail's End, and there's like this tie-in to the fact that that's what makes it unique is the Oregon oak finish in it. And then with this, people are just like, oh, it's another Connecticut shade cigar, whoop-de-doo. And like you said, once you get that story though, and you find out, this is the first time around with this wrapper leaf, it smokes them, I think, very good. I think creamy.
Oh, yeah.
People say creamy a lot for Connecticut, but this one, especially with this whiskey, the bourbon, it's there.
I get a lot of, I don't know about you guys, but I get a lot of resemblance of the Monty White, that creaminess, but you get so much of that Nicaraguan flavor profile and that spice and the blend coming through it too. And I think that's just hands down awesome.
For the person that likes Connecticut, they like the smoothness, the creaminess of the Connecticut. This is a good way to bump up to a more medium-bodied cigar.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Because it's got that additional spice to it with the Nicaraguan tobacco.
Yeah.
And even on the retrohale, it's got a nice, soft, pleasant spice on the retrohale. It's not like super black pepper type spice. Like on some cigars that we've had from Nicaragua, but it's just very pleasant and enjoyable. But it's got enough of both worlds. Like, guys that like the spice from Nicaraguan tobacco, it's got it. guys that like the smoothness and creaminess and that type of flavor that you normally get with a Connecticut shade.
Yeah.
It's got a little bit of that too. It's just kind of bumped up a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Josh, what were you going to say?
It's like a coffee. Hey Dustin, hey Nate. I didn't get to say hey to you guys. How are you?
Good.
I know it's a little different now with this format,
good.
right?
Yeah. Hey man, I wish I could be there with you guys tonight, but hey, soon enough, right?
Soon enough, man. Soon enough. Yeah.
But are you guys coffee guys? Are we all coffee guys here? And whoever isn't, I mean, you guys can imagine. I mean, it's kind of like anything grown. I guess chocolatey. There are a lot of notes that we'll get to in that. But when it comes to coffee, you can have like a spicy coffee, right? Mm-hmm. And it kind of sounds weird when I say it, but we were doing coffee tastings. I went to this coffee tasting right at the start of quarantine. My buddy has a roastery here in the Cincinnati area, and I was doing different tastes: Brazil, Nicaragua, Honduran. And so you're getting the different flavors, but one of them, and I can't pinpoint it, has a little bit spicier of a feel, right in the mouth, the way it hits your tongue, and that's what I get off of this. I'm getting a little bit more of those coffee notes, but then that spice to it, and then it finishes with Nate, how you were talking about like a creaminess, and it's almost like a white chocolate.
Yeah.
That's
like that creaminess you get from white chocolate.
I could see that though.
I mean,
yeah, you're not wrong.
It's funny that he's talking about coffee notes, because this is one of those cigars that, previously before the lockdown, on a lot of Saturdays, this might be that cigar. This or Monte Cristo White was usually one of the cigars I would start my day with while having a cup of coffee at the shop.
Yeah.
This with the Jennings Java City Roast.
Yeah.
I think would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
Josh, I appreciate it, man. I mean,
absolutely.
Where are you headed right now?
I'm picking up food, bro. I've got my order called in,
Dad duty
they're
right
closing in a few minutes. What's that?
Little dad duty?
No. Yeah, at least it was working late tonight, and I gotta go and I gotta pick up a couple of bottles of wine anyways, going to Cooper's Hawk.
Oh, nice. Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
Good,
yeah.
Man.
Absolutely.
Well, we got to lock down. You getting back up here, okay?
Absolutely. That sounds good. Guys, thank you so much for having me on. I hope that you guys enjoy the rest of your smoke of this Romeo and Julieta 1875 Connecticut, Nicaragua. Enjoy. I'm going to be watching as soon as I get off here, and we'll see you soon. We got some good things coming, right?
Absolutely.
Thanks,
Appreciate it, Josh. Thanks, brother.
Guys. See you. Cheers.
Yeah. There we go. So this worked out nice.
Yeah.
First trial run, we got it knocked out there. So I wanted to bring on an expert here on this blend. So Josh was available, and I appreciate him doing that. Again, Josh has been a huge supporter of the podcast for quite some time, and we appreciate that. So anyone that's just tuning in now, you just missed Josh Bentley from Altadis USA. And he had some extra information on this blend, so that helps us out getting it straight from the brand itself. So, and again, we want to get him in the garage. So, going back to the Trails End, what do you guys think of this? It's Nate and I were talking about what to drink tonight, and right now, for those of you that are not in Columbus, Ohio, it's 85 degrees at the moment. And that's hot for this time of the year
toasty
in Columbus, Ohio, at 8:00 in the evening. So we didn't want to go. He was kicking around some rye. He was kicking around some higher proof stuff, and I was like, I don't know. That's
ryes are 50 and below, I believe, right?
Yeah. So this one's 90 proof, right?
Yep.
Doesn't drink like 90 proof.
No. What do you guys think?
It drinks. I think initially when it hits the palate, it drinks a little lighter. There's not a whole lot of richness or thickness to the flavor. It's kind of a bright whiskey, I think. And then on the back end, I do get a lot of that additional oak flavor with the with that finishing process with the
Yeah.
staves. I get a lot of that oak on the back end.
Yeah.
It almost tastes like when I had my first sip, I was like, really, this is an 8-year? It tasted a little young at first, but I think that's just the brightness of it. Like it's got a good flavor to it, and that finishing process just is, you know, it finishes the whiskey and it finishes it in your palate too.
Does it did they state how long they kept the Oregon staves in it?
I'd have to check back because I had messaged them back and forth. I think back in February when I was hoping to bring this on the podcast, and then because we had certain guests coming on and stuff, like I think I was gonna bring something like this when we had Amy on or something like that.
Yeah,
I couldn't be here
from McClellan's.
Yeah,
gotcha.
It's like, well, this or the you know, the Weller Foolproof. Like, yeah, Weller Foolproof. That's a good call there.
Yeah, no, well, if you have a foolproof, it's one to go with.
Yeah,
usually.
I'm sorry you guys all missed out on that.
While Dustin talks about it, I'm going to see if I can find the message where I was messaging them back and forth.
Okay, yeah.
That
Dustin,
works.
what do you think of this here?
So
first of all, the cigar, you know, yay, nay. I mean, we're going to go to the rating system at the end of this, but
yay
okay,
through and through.
Okay, now the whiskey
through and through. The whiskey again, yay through and through. I think it definitely does drink a little bit lighter than that 90 proof, but it packs a ton of flavor, and I think a lot of that comes from the 8 years. I got a lot of that oakiness, a little bit of sweetness, but then once I started pairing it with the cigar, is like a caramel flavor bomb going off, and I think a lot of that has to do with that Connecticut creaminess blending in with it. And it pulled a lot more of that sweetness. Pulled a lot of that sweetness out of it. And it's just, I mean, I think the two of these together is just, as Brad Grimsley would say, lights out.
Lights out.
Just lights out. I'm telling you, it's the first time I've had the Connecticut Nicaragua, and I can tell you right now, it will not be the last.
There you go. I don't know. The Trail's End, I like it. It's an interesting story. I like. I mean, it kind of reminds me of, you know, some of the, like we had Watershed on here. You know, we have a lot of local distilleries, and I think they're popping up all over. And I think that story kind of reminds me a little bit of that. Is that you've got a local distillery up there that probably, I assume, I don't know, but I assume they probably are doing something similar. You said there's other spirits that they manufacture, that they just distill and put out. And then, you know, I would hope that they have some sort of bar, restaurant, whatever it is. I'd be interested to find out I don't know if you found that out, but I can see that being the case. It's got a great start to it.
I've actually been enjoying it more the more I've been drinking it.
Like most whiskeys.
I'm really curious to find out, not necessarily maybe exactly where it was sourced from, but maybe just the region.
Yeah.
Was it sourced from somewhere out west, or was it more here in the east, middle west, Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana area?
MGP is what you're wondering.
Well, MGP, or it could be George Dickel.
Out
of Tennessee.
Dickel,
I don't think it really drinks like a Tennessee whiskey, but it could be an MGP product.
It says Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey on there, just so you know.
So my guess is probably MGP.
So
before you,
no, MGP is in Indiana.
Yes,
true.
And
true.
They actually told me that it is distilled and aged in Kentucky, and then it's shipped to them in Oregon, where they do the finishing process.
So I wonder if Heaven Hill does anything like that.
That's kind of what I was thinking with that.
That would be my guess. I mean, they have a wide variety of their own products, but they do source some of their whiskeys to a lot of other high-end names that you see.
Yeah.
And and all they told me was, traditional mash bill, corn, malted barley, and approximately 10% rye.
I don't know.
I'm looking at 80+% corn.
That's a high.
That's super high. That's way.
Well, barley's usually not higher than the rye. I could be wrong.
I just
your
think
typical.
I think with this, if it was say 100 proof or higher, I get this like little hint of like cinnamon up front, and then it goes away. Like kind of has a, and maybe it's the warmer weather, but it's almost like it kind of dries me out a little bit at the very end. It's like got a really like
dry
sharp dry finish on it, which I'm interested.
Does it dissipate pretty quickly? I've
It's a
noticed
short
that
finish.
kind of
Yeah.
real quick.
It is a short finish. But no, I think if this was higher than a 70% corn, it would be sweeter.
Yeah.
Unless somehow that oak finish somehow masks the sweetness, but I don't think that would.
Okay. Sorry, I'm messaging Ray Cheshire out, and he's a listener in Nam. But again, our first time doing this podcast, he says that Dustin must have set up the mic because he's the only clear one. So I don't know what he means yet, but we're figuring it out. So let us give us some feedback if you guys are out there. We're trying to do this the best way. That's why, again, we've got some of the familiar faces on here while we do this.
Yeah. No, I really think this
we
is
sound good.
an absolute killer combo.
I think it's good. It's like I said,
I think
dry
even
finish is kind of like, again, on a hot day.
Yeah.
Think it's just,
I could see that. Do you think I'd be interested? Obviously, I always love to try my whiskeys neat before experimenting with, water or ice. I'd be interested to try this with, an ice cube or two and see.
We can arrange that. I think, I've got ice. We can see if someone can get us a little bit of ice out of the freezer. Not that the other fridge.
I think just with
the
that
inside fridge, not the two out here.
I think just with that hot weather, chill it down a little bit. It's already at 90 proof, but I'm curious now.
Mm-hmm.
They do have a tasting room.
They do. Okay.
That's good to hear. It's a few blocks from the distillery in Hood River.
Yeah.
And literally the distillery is right on the river.
Mm-hmm.
And then the tasting room's just a few blocks away into town.
Okay.
Interesting.
So for any of our listeners in the Oregon area,
yeah,
there are a couple.
Yeah, I have a map with pins where we've had listeners chime in from.
Oh,
I like that.
That's pretty sweet.
I wanted to hang it somewhere in the garage, but I want to put it on like a backing, like a board or something. Like
put it on the far wall, and then we can just start throwing darts from where we think they're from.
No, let's not do that because I've seen what happens when guys in this garage start playing darts after drinking during a podcast.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, it doesn't go well. Guys, have you been drinking? Now that I have actual friends, well, I have people. Let's call it people. I think friends, but in the garage. I mean,
I'm your friend.
Doing this again out and about, having trying a new whiskey. Thank you for the ice there, Shannon. You want it? You want an ice cube?
Yeah, let's give it a shot.
Now, just touch the one though, because you got to be careful. Now we should have had tongs. Yeah, you touched more than one, dude.
It was one. The ice cube moved the other.
Gone for it. Nate, do you want any? Are you good?
Sure, I'll try it.
All right. Well, touch the one that he touched already, and then maybe I'll grab one.
Wait, which one did you touch?
I don't know.
Come on, now shake him up. Jesus Christ. I'm good neat.
Oh shit! I got too much.
So,
I need
you
more.
got aggressive.
I need more whiskey.
So yeah, so that was so my question is like, have you guys? I know Dustin, you've been working like crazy.
Yeah.
But have you guys been drinking more? I mean, again, we've done the podcast, we've done it remotely, we've done all this stuff, but I feel like now that we're
I wouldn't necessarily
COVID style, we're getting a little bit more back to normal here in the United States, but drinking more at home, not going out.
I mean, definitely not going out. Just because at work I'm exposed.
House, kid. Dog.
Yeah, I'd come home and immediately change and wash my hands and everything before I do anything or touch anyone or anything. So, but I mean, I've been drinking a little bit more, just relaxing. If I have a free evening where I don't have to get up at before the sun decides to move.
Yeah.
We may sit out on the front porch and have a drink or something, but especially Wednesday nights, I'd have a drink at home, watching the podcast and but I mean, besides that, not really a whole lot. You get margaritas every now and then.
Dude, I went through a phase, man. I mean, when we first started doing this, it was I feel like I was not spending as much, not staying in, obviously going out to the bars with tips and everything like that. We just went out to a Double Barrel, one of the community members.
Probably weren't eating out as much.
Well, not quite as much. But we'd still do the takeout. We're trying to support everything. You know, we're trying to support people throughout all this. And some of the places that Liz and I go to, we were trying to go out there once a week, pick it up, you know, carry out, not just do we talked about that. But I feel like as this has all gone on, it's really weird for me because as this, it progressed through the time period and the ups and downs of people, you know, going through unemployment, you know, the April month when our shop was closed down, but it was a different type of busy. And then it's like now May was a hybrid and it was kind of weird. And now we're kind of back to normal. It's like now I feel like I come home and I don't even want to drink. I don't want to come out to the garage. I love all you guys that are in the, you know, on the community page and all that stuff. But it was almost like I just was getting back to that point, maybe because it was a new routine that I just want to come home and watch a TV show and go to bed. And I don't know. I hope that it kind of goes back to taking the best of both worlds. You know, I hope it comes back to the thing where it's like, I want to socialize. I want to go out. I want to stay in. I want to do all these things. Having the puppy, sleep schedule's been different. Especially in the mornings. Not digging that. I'm not looking forward to winter when I have to let the dog out in snow. This morning, it's like already 77 degrees and like the sun's coming up in the back of the house. It's like, you know, 6:30 in the morning and I go out there drinking my pre-workout, you know, and I just sit back on the back step and I'm like, this is pretty nice. And then I thought about it. This is going to suck. So this dog needs to be able to get out on the, you know, well, yeah, he's got the lead or whatever, you know, got like a 30-foot lead out there. And I was like, he's got to figure this out now because I am not sitting out here or walking you around the goddamn yard at 6
thinking about it, you got about
dark.
6 or 7 months to figure that out.
Yeah, I don't know if that's going to be enough time. But yeah, so I feel like I drank more, you know, in the garage more often. And I spent a lot of time on video calls and stuff like that with some of you guys and some of the people out there. And I hope everyone's just kind of finding that. We talked about it on previous episodes recently, like a new norm.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. You know, when you said you find yourself drinking more, is that more towards like the beginning of it all and it's just kind of digressed a little bit, or is it just kind of sustained?
I think it was there's more time. So you know when we first started this, we were knocking stuff out, and so I'd be back at the house. The gym wasn't open, right? So nothing's open. So you come home. And I talked about it, like the house was kind of like a drug house for a little while there where, you know, we were doing some pickups at the old Rangel place. And it's
right in the cul-de-sac. Nice.
But right. Yeah. By then it was, 4 o'clock and nothing else to do. So it's like, okay, you know, eat dinner and then, all right, who wants to get on a Zoom call or, everyone's home. Everyone's just doesn't know what to do. And I think as it went on, and more people were getting used to not doing anything. It's like you almost got. I did, and maybe I'm not speaking for anyone else out there, but I feel like I got
accustomed.
I got bored with drinking in the garage and talking to the laptop and smoking cigars. I mean, it was almost like, all right, what do we want to do tonight? I don't want to go back out there. People like messaging you and like, hey, you want to, get on a video call or something? Like, no, I don't, man. I saw you the last 3 nights. Like if I saw you in person the last 3 nights, I probably don't want to see you tonight.
That happened to me last night because
no offense.
You started that room on the community page Sunday.
Yeah.
And Monday night there was myself, Tyler Jones, Dave Miller, Shannon jumped on, and then last night. Got home a little bit later and had a sandwich and then went outside, took a couple cigars with me. And I was like, I'm going to jump on the room, see if anyone joins.
Yeah. That's the point of it, right?
I sat out there and had to keep reopening the room because after so long of no one joining, close out. So I joined back in. And after about an hour, I was like, well, I still got about 2/3 of this big BS silver. I guess I'll start watching a movie on my tablet.
Yeah, I started that room. So that's a new thing. Facebook during all this stuff, I think it was really good timing. A little late, but, Facebook started this whole room thing. So we have that Bourbon and BS community page. So if anyone listening is not a part of it, just ask to be a part of it and I'll approve you. But the idea is that even after all this stuff, when you're at home or whatever, you can always just, if you're bored, open it up in the background on your laptop or on your phone or whatever, listen to music or whatever. And if someone hops on, you can see it pop up. Obviously, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, however many people on there. But the idea is that you don't have to set up all these Zoom calls. No one's got to pay for an account anymore. No one's got to it's like, if you watch it on Facebook, watch the podcast on Facebook, you're a part of the community page. You obviously already have it. So at that point, you just need to, message someone in the group or post it. Hey, tonight around 7, I'm going to, hop on the virtual lounge. I like the fact that coming back out of this, we're still, I love coming back to this format where I've got you guys in the garage. Yeah. I like this. I like reviewing the cigar. I love the fact that now with because of the Patreon support, it's the fact that we have this new service with StreamYard that I can bring a guy like Josh Bentley on while we're in the garage. I mean, this is
so cool.
Yeah, it's taken it to another level, and I think we talked about that earlier on in the call it the quarantine, whatever you want to call it, during this last few months, was that I forget which episode it was, but hoping to have the creativity that people had that I feel like that that we had with the podcast, with the shop, a lot of people in the cigar industry, a lot of people in a lot of industries, they were being more creative, but coming back out of it, not just to slip back into old routines. It's to take the things that you learn. Yeah, you combine it. You combine the good from when, before all this thing went up on its end, and now you bring it back to, yeah, exactly. Shannon's in the audience saying you pull pieces out of it. You just kind of add it all together, and I think there's a lot that you can do with it.
Well, I mean, because we have learned from the last few months using this new platform that we've been able to get some guests on that otherwise would have been very difficult to try and get. Because, when we're talking people like Rocky Patel, Michael Herklotz, Miguel.
Oh, I fully expected the viewership to be down tonight because my guests tonight are Nate Hale and Dustin Bovey.
Yeah, we don't carry quite the crowd.
After having 8 weeks of these national names.
But no, I mean, it was a way to be able to, because those guys, they have so much on their plate.
Yeah.
They're not always traveling to Columbus to be able to work in a podcast because usually we're
it opens it up, right?
Yeah.
Or even if they couldn't come,
we're scheduling our guests ahead of time, and if all of a sudden someone says, "Hey, by the way, I got, John Huber." If Miguel says, "Hey, I'm going to be in Columbus. I got John Huber with me," it's like, "Hey, I know we scheduled you 3 weeks ago. I got to bump you because this guy's more."
You got to line it up on a Wednesday, the travel schedule and everything else. I like the fact that
So why not carry that on after all this is?
Well, I think we want to.
That's exactly
the idea here is that you want to review the whiskey, you want to review the cigar, but I love the fact that the community has grown stronger. And if you guys are listening, you're not a part of the community. I mean, I know it's a little different. We're going to get into the topic here, shortly thereafter. This conversation, but I really think that is something that I have learned from all this, and I hope you guys have as well. I see Jim Dufall's on here. You better not still be listening because you said it's your anniversary, and I want you to get back to your very lovely wife. You're a very lucky man, and as I said in the post, I'm not so sure about her. And if you're still listening to the podcast tonight, there's even more strength to my statement, but. No, I think that the community's gotten stronger in all this, and that's the whole hope here. And so I'm happy to have Josh Bentley be a part of this tonight.
I think with everything that had gone on with COVID, and it opened up all of these doors with technology, and I like Shannon's point of taking pieces away, and I would love to see this to continue.
Strengths, right?
Yeah. And, I honestly feel like, a lot of companies and other groups and, even, schools and educational systems will take full advantage of this to utilize it to better themselves and work them into their plans because, a lot of these companies weren't able to meet. And now you can actually work this into travel schedules to where if someone may not be able to make it to, point A, they can still reach to you from point B.
Well, it's kind of like that episode we had, Adapt or Die.
Yeah.
When all this happened, we had to adapt how we did the podcast.
Yeah.
And we learned some great benefits of being able to do that. And so now we get to continue that even after all the restrictions lighten up, like we
Yeah.
still get to do that because it's been such a great thing to be able to do.
But and I think this is a great example. And sorry, we're just kind of rambling on this point, but I think this is kind of like getting back to, getting the band back together here, and that's the whole idea. And again, Shannon, you got to, like Dustin said, great point where you get the in the garage experience. Sean and Shannon, and we got Jess, Nate's wife. That again, he's a very lucky man. I'm not so sure about her, but
jury's still out.
Well, and when you two answered the question about have you been drinking more during this, I was like, I was going to defer to her.
Has she been drinking more since she's had to deal with you more?
Actually, she has.
There it is.
She discovered her love of.
She's like, why are you airing the dirty laundry?
No,
man?
she discovered her love for like the lemonade sparkling stuff with like different flavors of Deep Eddy's flavored vodka.
Oh, wow.
Like she's discovered how much she likes those.
Oh, that's
but,
dangerous now.
But I know for sure I started drinking more bourbon and whiskey during this time because I'm just sitting at home. I got nothing else to do, and then if we're doing the room, like I don't want to just sit there in my living room and do the virtual herf. Like no, I got to sit outside in order to smoke with you guys, and I'm going to sit outside and smoke. Might as well drink something, and whereas before, maybe something on Saturday night, Wednesday night watching the podcast.
Right. Yeah.
Does your hands start to cramp every now and then because she didn't have a glass in it?
No, it cramps from holding so many cigars.
Oh.
Jim also, again, Jim Dufall, happy anniversary. Sipping a Four Roses small batch select. So I did get the last one that came out, and we might have to do that on a podcast. We've done it, but I think it's still like it's different, like right. I mean, so it's a new iteration of it. So I've got a bottle inside that has not been cracked. So hopefully,
if it disappears, I know where to find some.
There you go.
It's good.
But
to know
I think the reason that I'm kind of taking this first part, part one, back to this style is that there's clearly so much going on, and everyone's adjusted, and now we have a new issue, and we're not going to get into that yet. I think there's nothing wrong, in my opinion, to sitting down with people and having a bourbon, having a cigar, and watching a podcast or something that I know for me, I'm just absolutely, I'm inundating myself with it. Like, I mean, one of the first things I do in the morning now for the first time in my life is I go on Twitter, which I shouldn't do, but I do, just to see what is being said out there. And I follow people on far right, far left, and everywhere in between. But that in between is getting a little
dicey.
It's yeah. It's
muddled.
Yeah. It's like a roller coaster with some hard turns. You know what I mean? Like, it's not
and then
it's like
a
you're
sudden
not on a
drop.
corkscrew, and then everyone just ends up somewhere. But, I wanted to do this part of it because I feel like I don't think people are doing this enough. And I do want to remind people that part of this podcast is not only talking about life, but it is talking about the cigars and whiskey and feeding off each other. So yeah. I appreciate you guys being here and everyone listening, you guys, hanging out in the garage. I'm glad people are starting to become more comfortable with this. Mm-hmm. It's still not 100% comfortable, but I do appreciate all of it. And I appreciate everyone out there listening. And this is my little, my moment here. And doing the whole remote thing, it was very, very nice to see the support from everyone that,
mm-hmm.
Even if, Nate, Dustin, you guys are usually here every week being a part of it in some fashion. And I know you're not always able to be a part of it. And I didn't know what to do. And the fact that we had so much support from people like logging in and doing the remote interviews. Nate, you said it. I mean, we brought in some interviews that normally we've been struggling to get. And so I hope we continue to do that. So,
yeah.
And if anyone's in the Columbus area wants to be a part of the podcast, it doesn't have to always be a Rocky Patel, Alan Rubin, Ricky Rodriguez, Watershed Distillery. I'm trying to think. I'm leaving people out, but Eric Espinosa. It doesn't always have to be like these big names. I mean, like in the audience, I've got 2 previous guests, and you guys were part of the Alan Rubin one. So it's been a nice hybrid of everything, and I think that's what we need to do a little bit more of. So,
and even now, like, you don't have to be able to make it to the garage per se. Yeah. With the technology that we've,
some nights I prefer you didn't. I mean, not you.
Right. No, don't worry. I got the message.
But no, Steve is saying that. Steve says that because he knows that the more people that are here, the later his night's gonna go.
No, that
and
proved
Frank
not to
still
be the
gets up at
case.
6:30.
Oh god.
So Rob Wilson, is that what you're pointing out? Yeah, Rob. No, like I said, Rocky Patel. Rob was just a byproduct of that. No, that was a great podcast. So
Rob was on because he was able to get Rocky on with us. So yeah.
So for those of you guys just joining us now, we've talked about, and Bobby Crow says he's threatening he's going to be back in Columbus within 2 weeks. So,
oh god,
no, we've been smoking the Romeo Julieta,
Connecticut, Nicaragua.
Connecticut. I want to say Nicaragua, Connecticut, because I feel like that's what it should be. You know, it's a Nicaraguan cigar that's Connecticut seed, but they call it a Connecticut Nicaragua. We love the cigar so far, and we're drinking thanks to Nate Trails End, which is out of Oregon, which is the first one that I've had from Oregon that I know of.
Yeah.
So again, I mean, it's great that they got distribution all the way out here. You guys still enjoying this?
Oh, without a doubt.
Okay.
I liked it more without the ice.
Yeah, I
just didn't want to touch the ice after you two.
I didn't touch the ice. Dustin.
It was a great
Stand by my statement.
Yeah.
I think it was a unique add to try it out. It definitely added a lot more oakiness. I don't know about you, Nate, but I got
the ice.
Yeah. It definitely pulled a lot more of the oak out.
And then I'll start with you, Dustin, to continue on what you're saying. But so this is the first time we've done it, I think, since we've been back in the garage. But Dustin, you've been a part of this before. Yeah. So we've kind of started a new thing towards the end of part one where we do a 1 out of 10, 10 being the best, 1 being the worst.
Mm-hmm.
And so rate the whiskey, the cigar, and the pairing. So continue what you're saying, and then kind of roll into that.
The ice cube, like I said, it pulls out a lot more of the oak flavors from it. But I just like Nate prefer it more neat. I think
more neat or more Nate?
More neat.
Got it.
Yeah.
I want to clarify for the listeners at home.
Appreciate that.
Sure. I'm sure they got that.
The captions. You see Nate Trails, which is funny because now that Facebook does captioning automatically, it thought you were saying Nate as well. Just saying.
There's
Right.
only so much of me to go around.
All right, go on.
Anywho, so the whiskey, I think I would probably rate that a solid 7.
7,
7.5. I think it's got a lot of great flavor. I think at that kind of 90 proof, it really opens it up. I'd like to see it at that 100 proof just to see what other flavors I can get. The cigar, definitely a solid 8.5. Such a complexity of flavors that come from that. Thank you to the Nicaraguan tobacco. It's a Connecticut seed, but I just you, Steve, and I think you, Nate, all love, and I've been tending to lean more towards Nicaraguan cigars with Nicaraguan tobacco. But I think this is just a fantastic cigar, and the two together, I think is a good 8. I think they pair well together. They really
7. What was the whiskey?
7 for the whiskey, 8 for the cigar, and then
8 is the pairing.
Yeah, 8 total.
Got it.
I think the two together is really a really great combo. Get that oakiness,
a
lot of sweetness, that creaminess from the cigar. They just, I feel like they really complement one another.
Nice. Nate, how about you?
I'm right there with Dustin. When I added the ice to it, it started to taste more like what we've talked about before with some of the Ohio whiskeys.
Yeah.
Just a little too bright. I give it a 7 for an 8-year that was distilled and aged in Kentucky. I thought it'd be a little bit darker color. I thought it'd be a little richer in terms of the flavor, but it's actually very bright, like you would think a younger whiskey would be. And then the cigar, I absolutely love the cigar. I do give it an 8 as well. I had my numbers in my head before Dustin was even saying his. No, because I really do enjoy the cigar. I do enjoy Connecticut tobacco. And that was the reason why when this cigar came out, I was interested in trying it, because I do like a Connecticut shade. I like whether it's a true Connecticut or an Ecuadorian Connecticut, like is on the Monte Cristo White.
Right.
I do like that cigar. I do like that flavor from it. So I was very intrigued and curious to see how this cigar was going to taste with that seed for the first time being grown in Nicaragua. And when we first got it in at the shop, I was very pleased with how the cigar smoked and how the cigar tasted, the flavor profile to it. I absolutely loved it. So yeah, so 7, 8, and 8 for me as well, because they do go well together, because they're neither one is heavy enough to overpower the other one.
Yeah,
but neither one is light enough to get covered by the other one as well.
Yeah.
So I think they do marry quite well together. Both have a little bit of spice to them, so that complements each other very well. And then they both have kind of the what I said about the whiskey has a brightness to it. The Connecticut tobacco has that smooth creaminess, and so they complement each other very well, I believe.
I don't think you're wrong on that. I mean, so real quick, we did have Dave Willard actually said while we're doing this, just a side note, and feel free. We got 25, 30 people watching, give or take, sometimes more, sometimes less, but right now 25 or so. He says, what does he say? How did he say
Rate the podcast?
Let's rate the podcast. Yeah. So
this episode or just as a whole?
He just said, let's rate the podcast. Up to you. Jim DeFall, again, on his anniversary. Still going to give him shit about that. And Laura, thank you very much for
he did say brief attendance.
He's still on it. I mean, so like, I get it. Like, it was probably a good dinner. And she's like, you know what? This is why they're happily married. Because he's like, I need a cigar. And he's just scrolling through Facebook and sees it. But yeah, he said 10 for the podcast, and Dave said, great to me, such knowledge. So thank you very much. Dave asked, who does your wardrobe? 2 shirts out of 3, I've designed them. So me at this point, waist down. I don't know. I can't speak for anyone, but we're gonna.
You're still wearing jeans, and it's over 80 degrees.
Yeah, that's right.
No wonder you're glistening up top.
That's pure testosterone. Anyways, Laura says hi. She's listening too. Fantastic. Happy anniversary to her, especially. And
happy
A
anniversary.
saint of a woman for putting up with you. I mean, marrying you and loving you.
And
I'll
staying this long.
Staying this long. No, again, it's funny. Happily married, and that's fantastic. You guys know each other that well that you can hang out on a Wednesday night after an anniversary dinner and listen to us. That's I don't know if it's a good or bad thing. So with the whiskey, what's the price on this again? Besides being super specific,
$45.69.
It's pricey, but I mean it's a small name thing, and we talked about that with water.
They do
Is
one
it
batch a
pricey
year.
though?
They do one batch a year.
I don't know. It's not anymore. We talked about that as well. Like so, like for $45, you're I've said it plenty of times.
I feel like that's
now
almost a
walking into the
median
game,
anymore.
you're $40 to $50. I understand that. Some of the big names, they're able to do a smaller or lower price. So I guess 45 is not that far off. To try it, yes. To buy it again, I'm not sure. I think I'm in that 7 to 8 range. I like it. I think it's different. I mean, even though it's sourced and then they put their tweak on it, I like that because you don't hear that. Most of the time it's either you're distilling it yourself, right? Or you're sourcing it completely, bottling it, throwing it out to the public
with your name on it.
Yeah, and this is something, according to what they're saying, is that they are sourcing it and then they put their finish on it. That seems unique for the industry. I mean, so
I think it'd be really cool to see them do something like Woodford does, where instead of doing the individual staves, they have their own Oregon oak barrels that they finish it in for 3 to 6 months.
I don't know what again, based on
like
what
a double barrel.
But think about this, based on what Nate said though, with the issues at hand in Oregon, maybe down the road they will. Maybe that's part of their effort is that they're going to be a very much. We've talked about CLE when Nook was on. That's one of the things that Aroa Cigars is really good at, is that they it's, I forget what they call it, what the Bayer certification maybe, where they take down a tree. They plant a tree. To have that sustaining effort to do that, maybe that is a long-term goal for them. Maybe fast forward 20, 30, 40 years, if they have some success, this might be the biggest Oregon distillery, and they're doing that. Clay Miller, I believe, you should try the bourbon from Freeland Spirits in Portland, Oregon. So yeah, I mean, maybe we've got to dip into the Oregon side of things. So, yeah. So I'm gonna give this a Bobby Crow says 7.3. Yeah, I'll give it a 7.5. It's a good whiskey. I mean, for $45, I probably wouldn't go back and grab a bottle as soon as I was done with one. But if I hadn't had it in a while, I'm gonna say, all right, for $45, I haven't had Trail's End in a little while, so I'm gonna grab that because I do like it. I think it's the first whiskey I've had in a while that has a bit of cinnamon. But most of the time, I feel like we're talking about cinnamon when it's like
barrel proof for like 114, 117.
Yeah,
that's
or
what I
your
would
rise
with that old Ezra.
Yes, I'd be interested to see what Trail's End would be with a barrel proof or a barrel strength and see if that would come out. And I don't know. I think the finish might be coming from, and I sound like a complete nerd. I'm trying not to get down that road, but I think that maybe whatever that Oregon, oak is doing, I think that may be the finish where it is a little sharp, a little dry.
Yeah.
And it may not be the Oregon oak, but it might be that process of finishing a source whiskey after 8 years, and then just or whatever they're however that timeline looks like. It might be something where it's like that's where you're getting that dry finish. I don't know, but I think it's a good one.
And they probably don't fire those staves when they put them in.
I feel like they would.
I would think they would, but who knows? But if they didn't, that would explain it because you got that really, that fresh wood finish on that, and it's going to be.
It doesn't add any of that charcoal richness type flavor to it. It doesn't make it any darker.
Yeah.
With that finishing process, so maybe they're literally just sitting there cutting staves and throwing them in the barrel.
Yeah. Bobby Crow says I'm treading towards a Jacob Sanders review, making it barrel proof. We miss Jake. Wished him the best. If you guys are in Indianapolis, I know that he's going to be opening up the Burn Lounge here again, hopefully soon. There are certain restaurants and bars that aren't able to open up depending on what state you're in. So hopefully he does that as well. But no, Bobby, not everything must be barrel proof. Going to the cigar, I'll say this about this cigar. I've noticed in the last 7 to 8 years in the industry that some people, myself included, love Nicaraguan tobacco.
Yep.
And they move on from Connecticut shade stuff because they like Nicaraguan tobacco. They like that fuller flavor. They like this, talking about this is from the Esteli region. They like this volcanic ash. It's like there's something there that they really prefer Nicaraguan tobacco. This being the first cigar, allegedly, that is a Connecticut shade, true Connecticut shade, grown in Nicaragua, it's the great equalizer. So if I'm looking for this is a little bit more expensive than the normal 1875s, a couple dollars more. The Toro right now on the shelf in Columbus, Ohio, you're looking at about $10.50, $11, somewhere around there. So it's a little bit more than what you're used to with Romeo Julieta. And now you're flirting with Monte Cristo from Altadis, right? So now you're kicking the door down where you're like, all right, so now I'm sub $10 most of the time for Romeo products, but now we're going over 10.
It's almost like a Monte Cristo white, but with a little different flavor and spice to it.
Yeah. Yep. That's just what I said earlier. It has that Nicaraguan kick to it.
Yeah.
But I think it's still got those. I mean, it's a good cigar. This is if you're into Nicaraguan tobacco and you're in the mood for a mild to medium. This is not a mild cigar in my opinion. I think this is a mild to medium cigar, and I think that this cigar has a ton of flavor. I was going to say shit ton of flavor, but Ray Chester says watch your language. So
watch it leave my mouth.
I think they did a great job. Altadis is one of those bigger companies that they'll talk about it, like having Josh on. I appreciate Josh Bentley being on tonight, and
that was great
and chipping in on the conversation. But I think this is something that will not be the last Nicaraguan grown Connecticut seed wrapper. I think we're going to see more from this, and I appreciate Plasencia doing this and teaming up with a great company like Altadis to put this out there.
I think they picked a great factory to do it coming out of Plasencia.
Absolutely.
Well, we know how much we enjoy Plasencia right now.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm going to say this, and this is based on price point. It's based on what I think is else on the market, and this is more my realm as the cigar industry. I would say this is going to be more 8 to 9. I think this is a cigar for $10 to $11, a mild cigar. This is going to be something that I pick up over other well-known Connecticut shade cigars. Yeah. I mean, this is something that I'm going to go to, like you were talking about both of you, you know, in the morning, coffee and all this stuff. Right now, going with whiskey on a nice hot day, got a lot of flavor. And I think it goes well with Trail's End. I'm going to give the pairing an 8+. I think this is something, if you guys were looking for something to try, newer cigar, newer whiskey, depending on where you're at, I think this is going to be something that you guys will absolutely enjoy, whether it be in the morning, if you're drinking in the morning. It'd be a good pairing and good for you for starting the day right. I did see that Josh's mother-in-law, Cindy, who watches, big supporter of the podcast. What did she said something about the fact that he was driving safely and also not drinking. So that's good. We appreciate the safety. This is what this podcast is all about.
I would really like to try that cigar with a nice cup of coffee. You know, like you said, Nate, I know you have. I think it would be a really great experience, especially just to start the day. You know, it's not
doing what, coffee?
Yeah, with the Connecticut, Nicaragua. I think.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's not anything too strong that's going to, you know, weigh you down to start the day. I think it's bright enough with enough complexity and flavors that it's going to give you that kind of kickstart.
I think
with the coffee
better with a lighter roast.
Yeah, like
than a dark roast.
Yeah, Jennings City Roast is a lighter roast with some honey notes to it.
Or their Mexican that they have right now.
Yep.
That's a good one as well.
Yep.
So Caesar or Cesar, based on the way it's spelled, I assume it's Cesar. Jackson says, you know, he's asking about why aren't Cubans yet available around. I don't know where you're at, and correct me if I'm wrong. I want to say Cesar. Yeah, like Nate said, it's still not readily available. There's still an embargo there. Now, I will say that this is the time where we're seeing a lot of change in this country. So who the hell knows what's going to happen?
Right.
You know, within the next 24 months, we might see Cuban cigars on the market. Not making light of anything going on in the U.S. or anything like that. But this is where change is happening in a lot of great ways in the cigar industry. I will say that I would not be surprised, mark my words, that we will see Cuban products in the United States in the next 24 months.
I could see that.
Just saying.
I would be surprised.
He says he's in Ciba, so not too far. He's literally here.
He also made the point, you know, he said 8 out of 10 is real good. What would be a 10 to us?
So a 10, the interesting part about that, we've done this this rating system for a little bit a while now.
Yeah.
And what I've loved doing about it, nothing against you guys, you know, because I appreciate your opinions, but we've had some of the reps and we've had some of the figureheads, the creators of these blends, and that's what I love about doing this. You know what I mean? I did it with Watershed on the bourbon side too.
Yeah.
You know, I asked the Greg, I was like, hey, you know, what do you think? 1 out of 10 on this, and he didn't give it a 10.
I don't.
10's a tough one to give out.
I don't think we've had any of the figureheads give a 10 on the product that we were featuring that night. Not one.
No. So it's tough. I mean, BS Gold 10 for sure. No, I'm just kidding.
I would.
I think at 10, it's tough to do, but that's a good question. We'll find out as we go down this path, as we get through the hundreds of the Bourbon and BS podcast.
I think a 10 has to be kind of one of those unprecedented.
It's got to wow you.
Here's what I'll say a 10 is that if you've got a $5 cigar that smokes like a $20 cigar and everyone loves this cigar and you're paying $5 for it, same thing. We go back to it a lot of times on this podcast. Not saying Weller Antique 107 is a 10 or Henry McKenna is a 10.
But when they were $27 or $31,
hindsight is 2020. Now that they're $50 a bottle, when they were 30, that's now a 10. So let's try to see into the future where we're at here. But I want to thank everyone for part 1. You guys have anything else to add on the whiskey or cigars?
No, I think we covered it.
I want to thank our sponsors for part 1. Tinder Box at Easton, they're the one that kind of makes all this happen. We appreciate that. All the support at Tinder Box at Easton in Columbus, Ohio. If you guys are interested in the new sampler, they've got the BS Cigar Sampler, which is our 3rd sponsor as well. There's going to be 6 cigars and a lighter. And it's going to be 25% off. You can contact us through the podcast, or you can get a hold of them, eastontinderbox at gmail.com, or call us, obviously, 614-475-7872. The other one, Altadis USA, that's where Romeo, Julieta, the Nicaragua, Connecticut, Nicaragua. Did I say it right this time?
Yeah, that time.
Connecticut, Nicaragua. Josh Bentley, thank you very much for being a part of this podcast. I'm glad this worked out, that we were able to do it in the garage and get the guest on. We know we can do it. I'm looking forward to having more of these conversations all over the world. And Todd Boss says, please tell me this $5 cigar you speak of. It was a big if. I will, as soon as I find what that cigar is. I'm probably not going to tell you. I'm going to charge you $9. But, and also the BS Cigar Company, like I said, there's a special going on.
You'll
Tinder
never
Box.
know.
I'm going to light that up. I know Dustin's got one already getting ready to light up, or he's already smoking the gold, which is also, the gold is made by Placencia Tobacco. They do a great job with that, and the boys at Alec Bradley have helped get that to be a reality. So we appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Silver
phenomenal.
Espinosa, Eric's been on the podcast. He's fantastic as well, and the Silver is smoking great, peppery. Maybe not your best summertime smoke, but there's a lot of people love it. There you go. So thank you guys very much for part one. Stay tuned. I don't know where this conversation is going to go. I might take it easy on the whiskey, but we're going to talk about accountability, and I hope everyone's enjoying themselves. They're safe, happy, healthy. Family safe, happy, healthy. Guys, thank you very much for being a part of this podcast, part one, episode 121.
Yeah,
we all
121.
Yep.
Now I got to look at it.
It's 121.
All right, it's 120-ish. Guys, thank you very much. We will, if you're watching the Facebook Live or YouTube Live, stay tuned for part two. If you guys are listening, check out part two. And thank you very much. Share, like,
Can
follow.
we actually cling?
Cheers.
Yeah.
Cheers, boys.
Finally, an in-person cling.
Yeah.
Missed that sound.
Freeze. All right, so now we're in between the podcasts episodes. Guys, thank you very much. We got a great audience going. A lot of Bobby says 122. I don't even know anymore. 123 he says. Yeah, he didn't.
You don't know.
Yeah, he's down in Texas. He doesn't know what's going on. This anyone need a break?
No,
I'm good.
Bathroom break?
I'm good.
If you guys have any questions for us on part two, it's, again, I don't want to go into too many rabbit holes on this, but who the hell knows? I mean, I feel like everyone's exhausted.
Yeah.
The whole country's exhausted. Is it Cesar? Can you say if I'm saying that right? Cesar Jackson? Am I saying it right?
Cesar.
You've been a great participant on this podcast so far, and I don't want to say your name wrong.
Mr. Jackson.
Yeah, Mr. Jackson. Cesar put 1 for Cesar, 2 for Caesar,
3 for something else if we completely butchered it.
It's only Mr. Jackson if you're nasty.
All right.
Thank you. Yes, my wife got that reference. Thank you.
Now I know why you guys are still married.
That's right.
All right.
There it is.
After 10 years, goddamn right.
She finally laughed after 10 years. I got it. He says Cesar.
Took a second.
Perfect.
I'm going to go with number 1.
I wish you would have said 1 or 2.
1. He said 1. He said 1.
Oh, there you go. All right.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Yeah. You just put the right accent over the E. I'm like, come on, man.
Even Avi's over here like 1. Come on.
Yeah, I think they know each other. That's fantastic. All right. God damn it. All right, you guys ready for part 2?
Yeah.
I don't know if I am.
Let's do it to it, Lars.
All right. And oh no, hang on. If you guys are got 20 plus people listening right now, share it, like it, follow us.
Please.
If you guys want to, that helps. If you guys are part of any pages,
Even if you don't want to do it.
No, it's all right.
All
Let's
right.
not force them. They've been forced to
I think we're gonna get a lot of rain.
Yeah,
coming
it's
up.
true. Forced to do nothing.
Luckily, we have a kayak in the garage. So, Shannon, if you panic, jump in the kayak and steer clear of my car because I don't want any dings on it. But just go through the yard and you should be just fine.
Well, I thought you got the kayak out because we were supposed to have thunderstorms tonight, but they stayed to the south. So I thought you just had that ready in case.
No, we thought about
That was when all the flooding
we were
happened.
joking about it when Liz's dad brought it over. I was thinking about just putting it right here on the table if I was by myself and just doing a podcast over it and just see how many people said it and just ignore it completely.
Do the podcast in it.
I thought about that too. There are cup holders, I think.
Yeah.
No, just ignore it completely. Ignore it completely. Todd says I was waiting on the Miss Jackson comment. Nice, Nate. All right, let's get started. We're going to derail too far. We're not going to be able to come back.
And thank you, Gianni,
Gianni,
or
that's
thinking we are funny.
That's Liz's stepmom there.
Oh,
So. Perfect. Watch what I say now.
well, she said you guys, so it's not
You
just
guys
you,
are
It's
funny.
Steve.
mostly about you guys, I'm sure.
I'm pretty sure it's a good
Gianni's
general statement.
fantastic. All right. Welcome back to the Bourbon and BS podcast. This is episode, what did we decide it was? Episode 121?
Yep.
Point 2, part
Go with
2.
it.
I want to thank our sponsors, Tinder Box at Easton, for the initial cigar, which is also from Altadis USA. That's going to be the Romeo Julieta, Nicaragua. God, I said it wrong. Connecticut, Nicaragua. I still think I'm going to see if I can get it renamed. I don't know if I'm going to have that kind of pull, but it's the Connecticut, Nicaragua. It is going to be through Altadis USA, along with, they did it through Plasencia Tobacco. But great ratings. If you guys haven't listened to, part 1, check it out. We talked about it. We brought Josh Bentley in, and we appreciate him tuning in and contributing to the conversation on part 1. Love the cigar. We're also drinking still Trail's End, as long as it lasts. Nate, thanks for bringing that. It's fantastic. Nice having people back in the garage that are also bringing whiskey. May have been the biggest part I missed about the entire part.
I was saving bottles for you.
Considering we both come with bags of bottles,
Yeah.
I think we should be set.
Shit started adding up. So I want to thank Altadis USA for the continued support. It's fantastic. BS Cigar Company, that's what I'm going to light up next. I know Dustin's already lit up a BS Gold, also Plasencia Tobacco, which is fantastic, the tie-in there. And then also patreon.com/bourbonbs podcast. That's one of the things that kept this thing going. So for better or worse, if you guys are listening, that's probably better. If for worse, you guys aren't listening and you don't care about us. But the Patreon page absolutely helps. And I said this, now that we're opening back up, I reached out to the company that did the prototype shirt that I'm wearing right now. I might go with a different brand, because this is, believe it or not, an extra large. So I think that some people might order an extra large and say, I can't wear the shirt. So I might go with a different brand. This is Bell & Cam's great shirt, but might do something different. But now that we're going to roll it out, so if you're already a Patreon customer, make sure you get that, and then we'll have some extra ones. And if you want to contribute, that'd be fantastic. But you guys are awesome. Tonight we're going to be talking about accountability. I'm at a loss, just like everyone else, going into this week's podcast. Last couple months trying to do the second part of the podcast when we talk about life. Jim Duvall says bought it at Baby Gap. I didn't. It's not a Baby Gap. Last couple months we've been talking about trying not to dive into the COVID-19 stuff, because I feel like it's everywhere, and the part of this podcast is everyday stuff. It's the life topic. It's tough to get away from what's going on in the world today, whether it be COVID, whether it be the racial inequality, the politics that surround every aspect of both of those, in my opinion.
Right.
So I don't want to encourage that, because I think it's not what we're about, but it's tough to ignore it completely. So the way my brain works is that, and if anyone has any questions, please feel free to either email us if you're listening to the audio. If you guys don't like what we're saying, I'm going to tell you right now, you tune out. I hope to have you back next week. I don't see this going down that rabbit hole. But if you guys have any questions or have any comments about what's going on, I mean, keep it friendly on the feed. We got about 30 people listening right now live, and hopefully more. Share it again. Like I said,
it's all about love.
It is about love. But accountability for me, and I'm going to kind of frame this one thing, and I'm not making light of it, but we had a customer in that owns a business pretty prominent here in Columbus area, and he bought some cigars. And I as he's leaving, I said, hey, just remember, as you're going back out there, make sure that you take care of people, your employees and everyone else. And I know he does a great job. And I said, on the other side is make sure you love everyone and also hate everyone, and you got everything covered. I feel like that's where we're at. And I think that doesn't just have to do with what we're dealing with now. I'm not making light of it. I'm not trying to offend anyone, but I think that this is a time that you realize when we're holding people accountable. I think that's the biggest issue that's going to come from all of this with COVID, with the racial inequality, with the protests and everything else, is that there's holding people accountable. If you've got a strong enough opinion about one side of something, I think that there's something that you need to live your everyday life with and be consistent. Accountability for me is all about consistency. And that's where I look at this, is that one of the things that people struggle with in this day and age. This is a day and age that I feel like this is even the most recent felt cute might delete later. This is a day and age that you can come out with a very strong opinion
and then delete it.
Wake up the next morning and delete it because you don't like the way it's being perceived. And I think that this is a world that we're living in right now, that when we do these reviews, when we're having these types of things, and again, I'm not an expert. I don't have all the answers. I realize that I'm struggling with this just like everyone else. I've had a bit of an evolution in myself, I feel like, in the last few months, especially the last week or two. But I think that's what I want to address, is that there's a self-accountability.
There it is.
I think that there is something that when you're in business, I think there's something like, you have to hold yourself accountable and hold the people around you accountable and not give in to that. I think when you're in a relationship, you definitely have to hold yourself accountable. The whole rationalization about your actions is something that I've struggled with in the past, and I've frustrated myself with that. And as I've learned from all of that, I feel like I've gotten to a point where I don't have the open mind or the tolerance as much for not other people, but people that don't hold themselves or other people accountable consistently.
I think your point.
And again, I understand that I'm going to say this. I know this is a disclaimer. Maybe we'll have a lot of listeners. I think some people may tune out to this because, again, we're not the experts. We're three white guys on this. I'm more middle-aged than you guys, but I mean, it's just that's the fact of the matter. But I'm going to say that right now. So I respect anyone that doesn't think that we have anything to say about this or whatever. But this is all part of it. This is the cigar shop.
The shop talk.
Where we sit around and we try to figure out the world's problems. But, again, I want to steer it more towards everyday life. But it's hard to get away from today's narrative.
I think, to your point, I think the most important piece isn't just necessarily holding other people accountable. It ultimately begins with holding yourself accountable. Until you can hold yourself accountable, you can't expect yourself to hold others accountable. And
Sure.
I mean, and that's, just my take on it. And, that's something that over the last 6 months to a year that I've struggled with personally.
Yeah.
And that's just, in life in general, whether it be, at home but even more so at work.
Yeah.
And, over the last month or so, it's been a lot more self-realization and self-fix because, my mind has been so clouded with everything going on. And it's not just everything outside of the world, but everything in my own life, whether it be work or home or just life in general, that my mind has just been, I've been allowing it to get so clouded that I've gotten in my own way. I've put myself in my own way.
Currently,
in a sense.
You're saying that.
Yeah. And over the last, few weeks, and it took, one of my closest friends to sit down and just blatantly look me in the eyes and say, you need to get out of your own way.
Okay.
And
how so? I mean, dive into a little bit more. Like what?
So
the
specific
or
the primary
like overall, like
just,
are you doing like depression? You
so
put too much
so part of it, I guess.
What are we dealing with here?
All the above.
So you're holding yourself accountable.
So it's just I'm a perfectionist, so I put a ton of pressure on myself. I put so much pressure on myself to be great for other people that ultimately, like I don't want to say self acceptance, if you will, is the acceptance of others, whether it be at home or just in life in general. And it had gotten my head so cloudy that I wasn't seeing necessarily what was right in front of my face. And
which is
just especially at work, primarily.
How
So I was missing things at work when I was, when I'd walk the store and
missing details.
Okay, minor details. Maybe a department wasn't running at the maximum capacity that it could be or should be, or maybe they're missing something, and I wasn't seeing that because I was going just 100 miles a minute, but I wasn't taking the
So
time.
you're not
to
even
clear my
talking
mind.
about COVID or anything else.
No,
this is just everyday life.
This is just everyday life.
Okay,
period.
that's good. It's good. All right.
So
So
relationships
Shannon
at
is
work.
part of the audience here. You know, again, they shared a drink last week, but you know,
maybe I
I
should
did that for you.
Maybe I should have set up the fourth mic.
Yeah, we'll do it next time. He said, "What about relationships at work?"
So, and then that's part of it too, where you know that acceptance of the people above me, you know, whether it be people of the district team or you know my store leader or people above the district team, you know, it's wanting that acceptance, but I'm thinking so much about it that it's just my mind had been so clouded. And I guess the best way to describe it would be when I sat down with my store leader, who coincidentally happens to be one of my close friends. He sat down and I did something. I pulled my wallet out and he goes, "Good God." I'm like, what? My wallet was like 2 inches thick.
You got a Costanza wallet?
No, it was just a bifold, but there was just so
Thin?
much. No, it was.
That's not. I think
There was
it's
just a bunch of shit in it.
good for you.
And he
That's
goes-
2 inches.
Anywho,
I'm helping
Son of a
with
bitch.
the self-esteem, right? You know, he says 2 inches. I'm like, a lot of people would call that different.
5.15 inch.
You got a George
But,
Costanza wallet, you know, Seinfeld. You got
Yeah.
You put it in your back pocket or front
Yeah.
pocket? So you got back problems.
yeah, sure. And he said, out of all of that, what do you use? And I have a small section that I pull out. It's got my credit cards, my ID, the key stuff.
Sure.
That's what basically all the things that I use on a daily basis is all right in there. And I pulled out and he goes, I get the issue now. It makes perfect sense. Like, this is the perfect symbolism of essentially what's going on in your mind is you're clouding it with all of this stuff. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but you're losing focus on the things that are right in front of you, whether it be at home or at work or anything else. And so, you know, one of the challenges he said was, you know, obviously
Clean out your wallet.
clean up my wallet. Yeah. And he goes, just take what you need. And then, so that's what I've been doing. And that just goes day to day. But on the flip side of that, you know, I have to hold myself accountable for things. And we had another gentleman who come in who goes around the division and works with other managers to help them grow and get to that next level. And which is what I'm wanting to do. Yeah. And when him and I walked, you know, there was a lot of great conversation. And one of the points he made was, you know, you can get so involved in everything in the day, but if something isn't right and you don't fix it and you get ready to leave for the day, the thought in your mind should always be, what can I do tomorrow better? What can I do tomorrow to make it better than it was today? Mm-hmm. And it was kind of an aha moment, because it goes back to a motto that I had when I was, you know, in marching band in college, which was, you know, years ago. Was we always had the motto, better than the best ever. And it was every day, every practice, every rehearsal, whatever it may be, we're always making that better than the previous.
Yeah.
And I always try to live by that motto, but with how clouded my mind was, I get lost in the abyss. And I feel like with everything going on with, you know, the COVID and everything else, everyone was kind of left in their homes with their own thoughts. You know, you don't have those outlets sometimes, like, you know, we do with the podcast or, you know, the Zoom calls and stuff like that to let that out.
Yeah.
On the flip side of it, a lot of people may also struggle like I did and still do at times with that self-accountability of realizing what are the issues and then how can you fix it moving forward.
Yeah. I think, you know, that's something that the self before this, and we talked about it in most recent podcast, actually, in my opinion, is that it's very interesting that going into this, it's the everyday life. I feel like that people, you take things for granted when it's just something you wake up and do. And we got a couple people like Janny says, the COVID-19 issue has taught us all about what is really important, the basics. And I agree with that. I think what you're dealing with, because you never had the you had a different side of a lot of people than a lot of people did with the COVID-19, everything changing.
Yeah.
You basically went from, I don't know, not 0 to 100, but it was basically from like 90% to 125, 200, whatever it is. So you didn't have a chance to get back to the basics. So now you got this store lead that is telling you like, hang on a second. You know what I mean? I had a wallet when I was growing up, and I think I still have back problems from having that wallet, when I got a desk job. And I kept like movie stubs, I had like
business cards, other cards.
I had a library card that expired in 1989, and I think this was 2002, 2004, somewhere in that range. I don't think the Westfield Public Library would let me in with that, and I think they'd probably laugh at me, and then they'd let me in because they're like, "Oh, you're not
going to give you
smart,
a new
are
one.
You? We haven't seen you since the 80s." But then, Cesar also says people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, and I think these are valuable lessons. And so with the COVID-19 thing, you had the other side of it, which is why I liked having you on tonight, is because, you see it from this. Everyone's like, oh, yeah, grocery stores and, Walmarts and all this stuff is like they're booming right now. They're just
my sales are
printing
still
money
crazy.
and all this stuff. And it's like there were people involved in this. And I think that now you're coming back out of it. You're going to see a little bit of a tick down, but people still haven't recovered from that aspect. Is that I think you'll still see people stocking up. Kroger's will
they are.
I'm interested to see for you, and I want to follow up with you as we come back from this. Kroger is for those of you who aren't local, it's a major, probably the biggest.
We're the largest grocery chain in the US.
Chains, but people started stocking up at grocery stores. Instead of just the Costco's and the Sam's Club, they're like, you know what? I don't want to deal with those crowds. I'm going to go to the mom and pop, not mom and pop. Kroger's not a mom and pop, but they're like, you know what? I'm going to go to the local grocery store and I'm going to start supporting them, and I'm going to make sure that I can get the stuff I need.
I don't need a membership to go there either.
Don't need a membership.
No.
I just live in the community. So I'm interested to see where we go with that. And I appreciate you sharing that, because it's interesting to hear that most people right now, and I think I said earlier that I go on Twitter and all that stuff, I feel like we see these common themes even today.
Yeah.
And one of the things that people that go into the Krogers, they go into these stores that got us through, in the country, let alone the world, but in the country, they got us through this by working their asses off. And again, I don't take anything. We had the IT one, right? Remember the technology one where I was saying, one of the things is that no one's talking about the tech guys, the tech girls, keeping this stuff going so we can do this type of stuff during all this stuff, keep things going. I love the fact that the first responders got a lot of credit, overdue.
Absolutely.
I honestly probably overdue since the last time was unfortunately 9/11. I think that was the last time that people actually appreciated all these foundations and charities. And all stuff. I'm not saying that you need that, but I say that that was something that it's like you just wanted toilet paper to be there, and you're pissed that it wasn't. You don't understand the supply chain aspect. And I think you guys did a great job, and I think that you're one of those representatives that it's a sacrifice. I don't want to use that word, but it's like you were able to have a loving fiance that said, no, you got to go do this. You got to provide for the family, and you also have to provide for everyone else.
Yeah. And
I think you held yourself. It's interesting because when we're talking about accountability, it's interesting to me that you had to have someone tell you that you have to, in a sense, hold yourself accountable and clear some shit up, so that you were already doing it, but you didn't have that guidance. You just kept waking up and doing it. And you do that enough, it's right back in the same boat that a lot of people were at, is that you took a lot of things for granted. You're just like, I got a job. I'm glad I have a job, and I'm just going to go to work, and I'm going to kick my own ass.
Yeah, and it was, I have the area, the business in the store that I'm over, I have, a grocery crew that's fantastic. And, a lot of stores would envy to have, a crew like that. But, I got too comfortable with it. I to where I wasn't worried about it as much. And that's not to say that that's necessarily a bad thing.
Isn't that a statement about the country and the world right now?
Right. But at the same time, if I want to take not only myself, but the store from good to great, I have to be able to take them to the next level. And I just hadn't done that because I was too comfortable in where I was.
Sure.
And that's where that self-accountability comes into play. And, I wasn't holding myself accountable to taking them to that next level.
Well, I think that that's something that people struggle with. And I think that I'm going to speak. Ray Cheshire says, as a frontline worker, can Dustin give any insight into the TP syndrome? I think we're good. I think we're on the other side of the
it was a psychological thing.
No, I know. He's kind of joking. It's
I'm sure.
We're good. I think if you need toilet paper, you're good. In the United States, at least.
We got plenty now.
But I look at what you're saying. I listen to what you're saying. And I one of the biggest struggles I think I know I've dealt with when I was in more of a managerial role, like a true managerial role, when I had 100 and some employees, it was holding myself accountable for both good and bad in the same respect that I was holding my employees and higher ups accountable.
Right.
It's so easy to hold other people accountable and then just do your own thing. And you were doing that to a point, Dustin, but not on the necessarily the negative side where some people like, do as I say, not what I do. Well, if you were talking about trying to help an employee or someone above you, like, hey man, take a breather. You know what I mean? And they're going to look back at you like, well, you haven't.
Yeah.
So again, it's both positive and negative that sometimes that some people, I think that they don't hold themselves to the same standards. A lot of times you hear about it when it's a negative thing, when you're telling people like, hey, do this, show up on time, and then you don't show up on time.
Yeah.
That's the more common thing that we talk about. And I think that's also relevant again to what's going on right now with COVID and also the protests is that, you want everyone else to act a certain way or to wear masks or to do all this stuff. But then the same note, you're like, well, I still need to get paid and I still need to be able to provide for myself. But it's like, There's a lot of hypocrisy, I think, when you talk about accountability.
I think that just begins begins with people holding themselves accountable.
Nate, what do you think?
Well, so one of the things I had written down while you guys were going back and forth, I think the importance of self-accountability is because you're holding yourself accountable when there's no one else watching. There's no one else around you to hold yourself accountable.
But yourself.
Yeah. And, if all you rely on is other people to hold you accountable in aspects of your life, what happens when those people aren't around anymore? So it is a character issue.
Shannon in the audience says, character.
So when I was a rep in the cigar industry and I covered a very large territory, there are some stories in the cigar industry that some people just wouldn't believe, some of the stuff that happens in the industry. And when you're on the road, like, it's easy to fall into some of those issues when you're by yourself. So like if I'm in Illinois or Minnesota or something, but my wife is back home in Ohio, like if I wasn't holding myself accountable, I could sit there and think, oh, I can get away with things here because there's no one near me that's going to hold me accountable.
Right.
I couldn't do that if I was at home. So that's what I think is one of the importance, because it causes you to hold yourself to a higher standard.
Yeah.
When you don't, what they say, integrity is doing the right thing.
I don't think it's a higher standard. Let me jump in there before you finish your thought. I'm sorry. It's not a higher standard. It's a standard.
That's okay. Yeah.
Let's not take.
It's all matter where you put that standard at.
Yeah. I get what you're saying. Yeah. I get what you're saying.
You need to glorify standards. I think that, if you're holding yourself to a standard, again, that's where I go back to the consistency. If you have a low standard, you can't hold people to a higher standard. And if you have a high standard, you can't hold people to a lower standard. Standards are standards.
Yeah.
I think it's an overused term a lot of times, higher standard or lower standard. It is a standard. That's the definition of the goddamn word.
It should be a standard across the board for people in that position. Like,
go on. I'm sorry.
No. So what I was getting ready to say, and Cesar just said it, integrity is doing the right thing when no one's watching.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's what integrity is. And that's also a sense of self-accountability.
Yeah.
And, that's something that we've seen in the last few months, whether it be the COVID or not even not just the protest, but what led up to the protest.
Oh, couple centuries, but yeah, more recently, the last 80 years, 100 years.
Yeah. But I mean, like, how, there would be a lot of things that might be different in our society today if people held themselves accountable, or there was other people to hold those people accountable before things got out of hand.
I think the other thing of it is, though, like you said, Nate, or if there's other people to hold those people accountable. I think in today's world,
I think it matters who is holding accountable as well.
I think
like Josh talked about his board
it's somewhat relative too, right? I think in today's world, though, sometimes people's quote board of directors are necessarily like, I don't know. I feel like not a lot of them will hold them accountable. So ultimately, they're not going to hold themselves accountable. And I could be completely wrong. I don't know, because everyone's different. But I feel like that part of the challenge that we do is to build that board of directors for yourself to help hold you accountable when you're not doing so yourself.
It's fair.
And that's one of the things, my store leader is also in my board of directors well before he ever became my store leader. So
odd how that works. That you now you're reporting to a good friend of yours, which would be an absolute disaster for a lot of situations.
To be honest with you, it was weird. It still is weird at times, but at the same time, I know that he will have absolutely zero idea or zero hesitation to tell me how it is. And
that's good.
Blatantly say, no, you were wrong. You need to get it together. And basically not necessarily put me on my place, but put that realization back in front of me and move that hand away from my face to refocus.
Well, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Alex Shaver says Ben sucks. I think that's what you're talking about.
Well, I think when you're talking about accountability, it's not just holding someone accountable when they do something wrong. It's holding them accountable when they don't do something right. So, like for the last couple months, Steve, the gym was closed.
Yeah.
And you weren't doing your normal.
Was it?
Yeah, I think it was. You weren't doing your normal gym check-ins, but you were still doing your focus posts because you were
forgot this morning, by the way.
Well, but you were still working out in your home. You were still doing something to hold yourself accountable to the standard that you have for yourself.
Yeah.
Because you know what not holding yourself accountable to that standard would lead to.
Absolutely. I mean, I with that being said, I mean, I tried to do the best I could, and now we're summertime again, and I'm looking back. I get these Facebook memories and all that stuff, on there, and I'm just like, God damn, 40 is right around the corner, and I think I'm not a dad, but I think I'm better than a dad bod. I'm not where I was, 4 or 5 years ago. So now I got my own motivation again, and God. Sucks being in a good relationship sometimes because you eat better. You know what I mean? Like, it's like when it's just by yourself and you're just like, fuck, chicken breast it is. No one's going to give me carbs. You know what I mean? Shannon, yeah, go ahead. And we're going to get the, just for anyone listening, we're going to get the fourth mic. We're going to get back to that, so you can have that. But we'll repeat what you're saying. Actually, come up here.
I was about to say, I can probably set up the fourth mic real quick.
No. I'm going to give it to you. Just talking to that. Give back to me. We'll take over the show.
So I live by the frustration gap. So if my standard's here and I meet somebody and their standards here,
Lower.
we got to
They
meet.
can't see you, by the way.
We got to meet in the middle. So you gotta bring that together and meet in the middle, because not everybody's standards are the same. You know what I mean? You got to find that way to meet in the middle.
So how do you?
Sorry. Meeting in the middle on that is a good strategy. I will say that. I think some of the most successful people find ways to bring people up, whether it be by example or through what we're doing right now, as a nation. And again, I'm not speaking for this. I'm just waiting for everyone to just tear down this podcast. That's fine. We'll do something else on Wednesdays. But I think you need to just
Go back to
but without microphones.
Go back to the
and
old
Facebook.
Whiskey Wednesday.
No, I think that you bring them up, or they're not around you. I mean, you can take steps. Sometimes it's a long-term project. You know what I mean? But if you're having that conversation, I don't think you need to meet them in the middle. And I'm not saying that's a bad strategy, but what I would encourage, and one of the things I struggle with is, and I'm getting better at it, I think age helps, right? So, I think that whatever the situation is, business, relationships, or everything else going on in the world today, is if you continually try to learn read all aspects of it. That's what I love about what's going on right now. Let's stick with COVID. It's not quite as a hot topic at the moment, and I'm not saying that we started this podcast not talking about politics, religion, or anything else, right? So
Let's keep it that way.
The world's fucking pushing it. So my point is that you need to have standards. What I think that's happening right now that we're seeing is that you have your own standards, and people are having it's not, how do I say this? They want to bring people, everyone wants to bring people up to their standards, what I think is the right thing to do. However, they then are hypocritical when you go out of whatever their standards are for one particular issue, and then you turn around and now your standards are different. There's no consistency. So when you know what whether you're right or wrong compared to everyone else, whether you're right or wrong, if you have your standards, keep your ears open to learn. We've talked about that before on the podcast, but you keep your ears open so you're continually educating yourself on what is the input. Never shut that off. That's the problem when it comes to standards, in my opinion, is that when you have your standards and or your opinions, your facts, and you shut it off, you might as well die right then, because you're not going to learn anything else. There's no more stimulus out there. You're just going to be a pissed off person, and people are going to upset you because of how can you think differently than I think? That's not okay. So I think the same thing with standards is that, yes, you meet in the middle in the maybe the beginning so you can have a conversation.
Yep.
And now you say, all right, maybe I'm going to reach your standards or your opinions, all that stuff. Or if you're steadfast and you have a good base, hopefully you'll be able to teach them something. The meet in the middle is not the and people couldn't see it. You were saying like your standards are up here, their standards are down here. That might be part of the issue that we're dealing with. I think that it's not bringing standards. It's educating both sides so that hopefully it's not standards. The standards stay the same. Everyone's got high standards, hopefully, like you were saying, Nate, which I don't like that term, but
okay. Yeah. Yeah, because at first when you said
standards are
middle,
different
I was thinking like
opinions.
lowering yours.
Yeah,
like, you don't want to lower your standards necessarily.
But we meet in the middle to discuss, to figure out
to close the gap.
Yeah.
I feel like meeting in the middle is a great starting point, but after that meeting in the middle, it's from a leadership standpoint, anyways, is how can you challenge the other person and yourself to get to maybe where your standard is, or if their standard's higher, how do you get yourself to where their standard is? When it comes to standards, like Steve said, opinions are completely different than standards. You can have two differing opinions.
And I think that to that, I think there's a lot of interchangeability of words in today's world.
Yeah.
People use and maybe I misunderstood that. I see standards as that people are looking at like standards of how to treat people, or standards of certain levels of accountability and things of that nature. I think standards are, I'd love to, this is where like I love having Nate on here or Dustin, but I need someone out there to like, all right, what does Webster define standards as, so that we have an equal playing ground. No, I know. No, you did a great job. I think you're spurring some conversation here. I really do. I don't think you were, I'm not saying you were wrong, but it's the same thing. I think that, so Cesar has been saying that no lowering standards, but then he says if meeting in the middle, he meant, quote, compromise, then okay. I think that's where you're at. This is now you have a level playing field, but there's always two different people in this, or two parties, that if you are the only one lowering your standards, you still are asking or opinions or issues of said issue that you're getting to this conversation point. This is why you're having the conversation. It could be showing up on time. It can be treating people what you consider the right way. There's a vast, broad scope there.
Clarify, I want to say lower your standards, but starting to.
You said you meet
in the middle, but your standards don't change.
It's that compromise. It's that mutual understanding.
Yeah.
As far as leveling the playing field, in a sense, I think it is. I mean,
find something you agree. So if you're talking about a specific issue, find something on that issue that you both agree on, and then be like, okay, we both agree on this. I think, this should, I think this should happen. Like, I think we should do more for this. You think we should do less than this, but yet we both agree on on this part of it. But now we can talk about why we differ in our opinions on this issue. Like, there's parts of the issue we agree on. I think these people should be held to a higher standard. You think they should be held to a lower standard, vice versa. Or you think they should do this. I think they should do this. But you're starting from a conversation of something needs to be different or something needs to change.
Yeah. So Jenny says, who's listening, and I appreciate this, compromise on some ideas, but not your standards. There is nothing wrong with uplifting and edifying others. Also, to learn from those who uplift and inspire you to be better. Cesar saying maybe an example would help. Jenny saying a level of quality or attainment, definition of standards. Here's my thing about standards, right? So standards to me is consistency. This is what pisses me off right now. I've been challenged recently doing this 120 some episodes, that everything going on in the world, we're not this podcast that we're going to have this, I'm not an expert. I tried to get someone on tonight who's been on the podcast before. And if you're listening, you're enjoying this conversation, we have 15 people right now listening live. I challenge all of you guys to share it or invite someone to join the conversation. I think this is something that we're not Fox News. We're not CNN. We're nowhere in between. We're just again, a couple of dudes hanging out, talking about this.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. It's like, I encourage everyone to get out there and do this. Don't talk just amongst yourselves. Put it out there in public and see who you can bring in the conversation, because everyone has a viewpoint. That's what my big thing is right now, is that right now I think standards is you have your level of standards, but there is that hypocrisy that you cannot allow anyone else to have their own goddamn opinion. Because if you don't agree with it, I don't understand how you don't agree with me.
That's well said.
Yeah. It felt cute, might delete later. My thing is that, you say all this stuff, you can't have a conversation anymore about this. I have learned a lot about recently. There was a time that, and I'm sorry, it's just too much, man. Like, with holding employees accountable, holding customers, relationships accountable, everyone sacrifices too goddamn much to try to make sure that everyone's happy. The bottom line is that it's not going to happen. The one thing that I've learned in personal relationships is that you have to be happy with yourself and steadfast, keep an open ear, but be happy with yourself and know the best you can who you are employees, Dustin, same thing. You lead by example, and it can be something on a day-to-day basis. It can be something that you deal with just in a personal interaction, or as we're seeing right now, you can do a bigger scope. That
kind of reminds me of one of my stepdad's quotable quotes that he used to say often was happiness depends on happenings. And if your happenings aren't happening the way you want them to happen, you won't be happy.
No, it's good. I think that's what's going on right now. Again, I respect it. I've been challenged that, we have a little bit of an audience and a diverse audience, not as diverse as some, but I think this is honest conversation. And like I said,
well, it has to start there. Regardless of what the demographics of the conversation are, you have to at least start with a conversation.
No, post it. Yeah, Sean's asking me, I'll read it. Get it out there. Again, your standards. Post it, I'll read it. You get after it. That's fine. So my thing, we're up to 30 viewers.
We doubled.
That's how this works. Say sorry. I'm going to read this. I haven't read it yet. So here's the thing. Standards are just like ethics. Unlike moral, they vary based on culture. But I think that's what he's saying. But what is right or wrong in our culture, I think we can all agree. Now, the private part of our moral is the ethics, and that is just a rabbit hole. No, you're absolutely right. Ray says, I used to have fun with that in business, trying to teach people when communicating at work the difference between fact and opinion. I think the observation is something that is pushing these issues now. Like, you can't get away from it. The reason that we didn't have the response to COVID, and I'm not going to get into everything that I've read the articles on this. It's all based on mathematics. It was and I can share the articles anyone that wants. All based on mathematics back in the mid 2000s, and now that we're coming back out of it, at least in the U.S. side of it, but this is a global thing, and this is something that it was not at the time that these designs were put out. They were not referred to with the medical field or with the economics, and that's why it was turned down in the country when Bush was in office. I can share the article with anyone. We've done it. We've wrecked a lot of things. We've saved a lot of lives. I think there's a lot of benefits here, but as time will prove, I think when we look back at this, is that I truly believe, and again, you guys can tune out all you want. I'm tired of, these are my standards at this point. I'm tired of dancing around the issues. Is that this is something that we learned a lot from each other. I think that we also learned a lot that there are a lot of intolerant people out there, not even talking about what's going on this last several days or in the forefront the last several days, but the last 100, 200, 300 years since the beginning of time. I think this is something that we've learned human nature through social media, through the mass media. I think that we have these narratives that everyone's diving down into, and I think that there's been a lot of things. I was a part of a church that back in about 2000 that I grew up in, right? I'm not religious anymore, and one of the reasons is because I saw human nature. And forgive me for going down this rabbit hole, but I saw people that grew up in this church that when they introduced new doctrine and not everyone agreed with it, people stopped talking to each other. And these were little things, in my opinion. As a 20-year-old, I was away at college. I came home. I'm like, what the fuck is happening? Didn't say that back then at 20 because I was very religious. Now I can say, what the fuck is happening? And I saw the divide. I saw people not taking communion next to each other. It's the same goddamn thing that we're dealing with. People are so steadfast in their ways that they will not learn from each other, and there's no compromise. Sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes I think more often than not, it's a bad thing.
I've seen churches split because they didn't agree on the color of carpet.
You can agree to disagree, but what's happening right now is that, and Jenny says the other 10% of the population is intolerant or snowflake. That's the bad thing about it, is that, that's where we're at right now, and everyone's got a fucking voice. I don't know. I didn't want to go down this path, but again, being challenged in a sense, doing this podcast, and this is truly a part two. We haven't fucking talked about cigars or whiskey one goddamn bit. but we've got more viewers in part 2 than we've had in a long time. And I'm not saying we're going to do this every week, but I think what happened in Minneapolis is it was a murder.
I think we all agree on that.
I don't think anyone with a fucking head on their
Yep.
shoulders can say otherwise. I think this is something that is bigger. I think that particular case has been actually muted in a sense. It's been used in a sense to have a voice for a bigger opinion. Yeah. But when you actually dive into that case, those guys, that was in my opinion, what I've read and what there was a money laundering scheme going on in Minneapolis, and they did not want to get fucking in trouble. And what I say to that is karma's a fucking bitch, and now they're going to jail. They're going to prison.
Yep.
And they're not, and that's all I'm saying about that. I think there's the standards, that's the hypocrisy on both sides or all sides of it, is that if you are that, and this is no pun intended, if you're that black and white on a fucking issue, you have already done what we were talking about, Shannon, is that you've turned off your ears. You stop listening. You stop learning. You just won't do it. And I have no tolerance for people that will not have a conversation just to hear the other side. And if you disagree with it, listen and then give your opinion, but you will not change. We do this in the cigar shop a lot. And I love the cigar culture because of this, is that if you go in there and you have a conversation, you're going to change someone's political standpoint, you are wasting your breath. It's a long game.
Yeah.
You're not going to do it in fucking 5 minutes.
No.
Same thing with a podcast. You listen to podcasts. This is, I hope, not one of them in a sense, for this reason. You don't listen to it because you just agree and just eat it all up. This is a podcast in part 2 that we have a conversation. We invite everyone out to contribute.
Yeah.
If I could have a Zoom call and contribute to like mediating 30 people at a time from all over the world, and that would be something that people would listen to, not just us, I would love to do it. That's chaotic. So that's why it's week in, week out. I think this is something that these are real people talking about it, and people that are chiming in and listening. This is the guts of America. This is the guts of the world. People don't listen to it because we don't have the platform of the money behind it, of like CNN or the other side of it, Fox News, or everyone else in the goddamn in between. You got to search for shit. You have to search for stuff. And every big company that we just rely on, Google, Fox, CNN, all of these things, political behind it.
Yep.
And it's enough to drive you fucking crazy, because that's when your personal relationships go south. Because I read this story, you read this story. And I talked to you about what I learned, and you talked to me about what you learned. And now I just don't even understand. Like, fuck you. I disagree with you. Like, you're with them.
There has to be that median, just like what Shannon said, that whole meeting in the middle, the compromise. And that's one of the things that, like you talked about, was the cigar culture, that community is you go into, and it's, I noticed that day one stepping foot into the Tinder Box is, it doesn't matter who you are, what you believe, what you look like, what you're smoking,
what you make,
right? It does not matter. You can sit down and have a conversation with anyone, and it be an open-ended, fully opinionated conversation. The key of the matter is keeping your ears open, and that's what everyone does. And I think that whole kind of culture is what ultimately just needs to happen in the world, period, is you have to have open ears and a closed mouth. In a sense, a closed mouth. You have to listen. And when it's your turn to speak, that's when you speak. But you have to do it with a meaning and a purpose, and not a purpose that is I don't want to say belittling to someone else's opinion. It has to be an understanding.
You have to know how to talk to people. You always have to know how to talk to people, and that's also what we're missing right now. Is that no one knows how to fucking talk to people.
That's part of that accountability.
And it's always about preaching. It's always about giving
trying to get the other person to come to your side.
Everybody's in their tribes, and nobody wants to break from those tribes anymore.
Shannon's saying everyone's in the tribes, and it's not. I don't think it's even intentional anymore. Well, it's social media. Sean's saying social media. The media, it's fucked.
Media,
I mean, like literally. I mean, like I said this right. So, like, and, you know, again, I tried not to get down this rabbit hole, but I was actually upset about the last, you know, like for obvious reasons, the last handful of days in the United States of America, that this has gotten to the point. And I'm all for the protests and honestly I'm you know, maybe I should have done something and said to my boss and said, hey, I'm not going to come in because I need to go down there. But I feel like it's something that I see both sides of it. Is I appreciate the people putting the effort in, you know. And with COVID the same way, is that I try to look at both sides of it. This is my background being a sociology major, is that I try to understand both sides of it.
Right.
That can be seen as a weakness sometimes when you do that, because you don't have your quote unquote morals of what you think is right. And I'm like, no, I'm still learning. I want to have a conversation about this. I think that you're right, and I think the other side is a little bit right, and everyone else in between is probably more right than both of you.
I think it's a failure to understand on the other part, though, if someone is saying that you don't have your morals by doing what you're doing.
No one's questioned my morals.
Okay.
They've just questioned my political beliefs. I think you sell yourself short if here's the easy example, and let's just fucking take the training wheels off. Is that
Ozzy Osbourne and Crazy Train?
I think that there's a big percentage of the world that thinks one way about who should be in office, no matter if it's local or federally, or if you're in another country, you think that. And I'm tired of people saying that I didn't vote for that person, so therefore I don't respect them. That's the shortcoming. That is what we're talking about, Shannon. And you can have as strong of a fucking opinion as you want about it, but keep your ears open and do not discount when the other person that you're having that conversation. You know, Shannon, going back to this is where I think this is a great example of it, is that when you're up here in your mind, and in your mind they're down here, and you're compromising, or you're meeting them in the middle. That's where you keep your standards. They can keep theirs. Now it's educating. This is how I feel. This is how you feel. The issue today is that with the accountability, no one fucking holds himself accountable, because all it is what they know. No. For those on audio, it's quote and end quote, air quotes. Not belittling it, but that's how it fucking works. And I'm tired of it, because if you stopped having conversations and again, I go back to the goddamn thing where I was, you know, growing up in the church, and I was taught something for fucking 20 years about how it's all about the congregation. It's all about people, you know, getting together and taking care of each other. And all it takes is one thing saying that, all right, now we're going to have gay ministers. And everyone's like, hang on. You're going to get a different denomination of the same Protestant religion. This is a deep-seated thing for me. It's like, how are you that lost? This is I appreciate your steadfast and your disciplined mind, but you stopped listening. You stopped learning. And I think that's what's going on right now. I think that's the accountability. You hold everyone else accountable, but you don't hold yourself accountable. And therefore, it's no holds barred. And this is, I think, why we struggle. Not talking about the racial inequality. I am talking about that, but I'm also like the COVID thing. If you have different trains of thought, the world today with Twitter, social media, the different mass medias, and also just running into someone in the grocery store, Dustin, the attitude, if you disagree with me, is fuck you. and you're wrong. I won't listen to you.
That
That's
just
not okay.
that just goes back to
That's not.
to Ray's point. He just put, it's okay to make it public, but you should also be open to everyone else's opinion too. And I feel like that's where everyone kind of fails. And that goes back to your point, Steve, is self accountability. You cannot hold someone else accountable for, per se, their opinion if you can't hold yourself accountable for your own opinions, because you have to be able to meet in that middle ground, that middle field, to not necessarily hash it out, but have that mutual understanding. And I think that's where I see a lot more people coming to that with some of these, the protests that are out there. But there are also still some that are steadfast in their own ways, and that's just them not necessarily holding themselves accountable, but taking that moment to take a step back and have that self-realization. I'm obviously the last person that can or will ever tell someone how to think or live their life, nor will I ever. But you can bet your bottom dollar that I'm going to take a step back myself and listen every day, because I work in an inner city store. I deal with it every day. I have associates that are scared, and they have every right to be.
No, I agree.
And so that's where I have to take my own step back and have that understanding. And it's not because I have to, but it's because it's my right to, and I should.
Well, I think this
and that's that self accountability, holding yourself accountable in today's world, with not just what's going on right now, but what's going on in the past few months, what's gone on in the past 30, 40, 80 years.
Here's my thing is right now is the perfect time for this protest, in my opinion. And we are, I'm down. Nate, you've been quiet and you're writing stuff down. I can't wait to hear what you have to say. I don't want to. I didn't want to go down this rabbit hole, but again, I'm surprised there's more people listening right now. Damn it, I'm not, because it's a fucking shit show, and I'm gonna drink more whiskey. But my thing is that's not the case right now. We're dealing with a culture right now with Twitter and social media. I gotta tell you. So this is my experience with what's going on right now, and it's not about the white privilege thing or anything else. It's purely observational, because not going to get into that, because that's I don't know where it's going to go. My thing is that we took a weekend off from COVID in the United States of America because of these protests. Last Tuesday, COVID was killing us, and we can't open up anything, and people are upset about that. They're upset about you can't go back to school in the fall. You can't do this. You're opening up too early because the cases are still rising. The COVID turned into a goddamn ticker over the weekend on the major news outlets. And I'm not saying, in my opinion, what happened this weekend was much more important. However, let's stick to the consistency here on the media side, is that you want to tell me that they're not about ratings or getting people engaged? Show me a peaceful protest on local news in the last fucking 5 days. I didn't see one. Every time it came up on my phone as an alert, I turned on in Columbus. This is NBC, ABC, CBS, Fox.
There's 4 locals.
No, you have to go into the deep parts of like Twitter or Instagram posts of people that are like, why aren't they showing this on the news? Figure it out. It's bullshit. I'm sorry, man. It's pissing me off because everyone's angry at each other, and it's not worth it.
It's fueling the fire.
It's because this is what it's all about. But correct me if I'm wrong, is that COVID-19 took a weekend off in America. Tuesday in Columbus, there's DeWine talking about it. There's Amy Acton talking about it again. And they were opening up schools in fall. It blows my mind that there is that much hate. And, like Ray said, about our president, it's, again, the president right now in the United States of America could literally sign a bill that just was like, if you're racist, you're going to get shot tomorrow. If you show an act, doesn't matter. Fuck him. Fuck the government. Fuck this. It's absolute bullshit. I think it's something that everyone's turned their ears off on both sides and everywhere in between, and I don't care for it. I think this is a conversation that we need to have, and the media needs to be held accountable in a sense that, or at the very least, is like look at who's behind CNN, look who's behind Fox News. That's going to tell your story. Don't trust any of them. Look at both sides of it. Look at smaller news outlets on the liberal side, look at smaller news outlets on the conservative side, and read both. That's how you educate yourself and figure it out. I'm just, Shannon, you hit a nerve tonight in a good way, in my opinion. And a lot of people probably are like, this asshole doesn't know what he's talking about, which is fine. And I hope you guys tune in for the cigar reviews. But I got to be honest,
BS Gold is fantastic.
This has affected my life in a sense, and it's not in as big a way as a lot of people. And I think there's a lot of major issues. Gianni says COVID-19 did not take a break. The news media always reports the crazier story. The American public, and I think the world in general, is a jingling keys fucking media.
Yeah.
It's literally something else comes out and there's a bright light that goes across the room. They're like, hey, what's that?
It's the laser pointer. We're all a bunch of cats.
No,
but Steve, to your point, I've seen some videos of, local news channels, primarily Channel 10, which I think is CBS here. They've kind of turned their focus a little bit more on the peaceful side of it here in the local area, but they're your blip live clips of Facebook Live and things like that.
Well, my opinion is because there have been curfews all over the nation, and now you have a reason to approach someone after 10 p.m. or whatever city it is. You have a reason to approach that person and talk to them. Some
of it's during the day, though, too.
You're right.
I've seen.
You're right.
And there's been one of the clips that I saw. I think it was just yesterday. Was there's local CPD leadership walking with protesters, and one of the 10 TV people was videoing, and you see her pull out a notepad, and her comments were, quote, I'm here to listen. I'm here to give me ideas. How can we fix this? Like, you tell me. Like, they're on board from what I've seen. But there's still unrest across the nation, and I think that just, it hurts ultimately everybody, and it hurts myself. And
yeah, I saw someone that I know that posted, who says protests don't make a difference after the officers in Minneapolis were now charged today, and the one was changed to a higher charge, and that's the thing is I think that's the whole point, is that you
and they're charging the others.
Heard. I think that some of the protesters, they've done God's work. I mean, again, not religious. I use that term because I think they've done the work for humanity. And I wasn't out there. Well, I wasn't out there. And what I will say is that there was a difference, and I had that conversation multiple times about the difference between the protesters and the looters. These are two different parties, and I think that here's the thing. Here's how my Saturday went, right? So and you can have your opinion about the panel tonight about, again, being white. I'm the most middle-aged person, but here's my side of it, is that I agree with the protest. I agree with the inequality. I think it's absolutely fucked up. And I've learned, here's what I've learned, is that I am not enough actively anti-racist to feel comfortable with myself. Now, on the flip side of that, Nate was there and Brian, the shop owner, that I got blown up with a couple texts on Friday night and Saturday morning that Easton, where the shop is that we were going to be a target of looting. I'm not worried about the protesters. I don't see a protest happening at a suburban mall in Columbus because you don't have the numbers. You know, the rioters and the looters, they have the numbers to branch off of. They get pushed off. Now you got those that. I'm not going to get into any of the other. I didn't want to even say it. I'm all I'm saying is that when it came down to it, Nate, Ron, and Brian and I, we stayed at the shop. We didn't want violence, but if it did happen, our hope is that there are people in the store. It's not vacant. And at the very worst, if you bust the windows, we're going to barricade ourselves in the store. So at the very least, after 20 years, the owner of this business doesn't have to start over. And personally, selfishly, I have a place to fucking get, work next week. If shit hit the fan and people were doing it, the bad eggs, the bad apples, I saw a fucking thing about the police, and it was like, if there's enough bad apples, small amount, they're going to recall the whole thing. And they were talking about the police, and I'm like, look in the fucking mirror. There's enough bad apples on any side of it. That's the hypocrisy. That's the standards. That is the accountability. If there's enough bad apples on any side of it, and you're saying hold everyone accountable, look in the fucking mirror. And I think this is something. I'm not angry. I'm just saying that this is something that, as us that sit around, I would love to have everyone a part of this conversation. Brandon Burns says, what are your thoughts on the cigar shop owners that chased out the looters with guns drawn? If it came down to it, here's the thing. We talked about it in our cigar shop here is that, we had defense measures if it was a self-defense thing. We talked about it as a group. We were not going to
instigate. We were not going to instigate anything.
We're not going to use that, like with guns drawn. The guns drawn thing for the, I'm pissed off when someone says, "Oh, the shop owner has insurance." Like, that's bullshit. That's not an okay thing. That's giving in to the rioters.
It's still a crime every other day.
So
some of the insurances won't cover it.
But the thing is that having the fact that we had our levels of defense, that was for self-defense. It was not for, and we talked about this clearly as a group, that this would never come up if they were just trying to break shit or steal shit. We are not defending things, property, with lives being at stake.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario, we lose. We couldn't hold the line, and we don't have work. Brian lost his shop. Truth be told, for all of you out there that said that, that the insurance is going to make people whole, bullshit. After 20 years, Brian's going to shut that shop down, and then Nate's got to find a new part-time job. I'm probably going to lose this house because I got to find a new job in the middle or the back end of COVID. So it's all bullshit. But my thing is that we said we wait. If something happens, we try to flag them, go to the next store. Let's do it. Like, we're here. Don't do it. We don't want any trouble. Like, we don't want you guys. Move on. And then when it comes down to it, they start trying to break the windows. We throw as much furniture as we can in front of those doors and everything else so that you cannot get in. That was it. We're not going to do it passively. We're going to make sure all that stuff is happening. And that's, I think, the difference, because everyone wants it to end in hate. And all it was purely like, we understand the major issue going on. But the other thing is that, again, the accountability, it's the standards, we hold you to the same level of accountability that you are holding everyone else in the world. That's the way I looked at it.
Well, and, regarding that issue, like you have one side that's sitting there saying, "Oh, this is a severe issue that needs to be addressed and handled. You have another side that sits there and says, well, if you look at just the numbers and the stats, it's not that widespread of an issue as is claimed to be. But if you go to the middle ground, like there is an issue of it. It may not be as big, or it may be bigger than either side sees it, but there's still an issue. We still need to address the issue. How we address that issue or how big of an issue may vary, but we still want to address what the issue is. And that's what I think you're saying when you're talking about, you agree with the protests that were going on. Like, okay, and almost every single American in the country will agree that the initial incident that kickstarted this was an absolutely horrible incident, and that was the catalyst.
That was the catalyst recently, and there are so many examples that led up to it. The best thing that happened to this cause that's happening right now, for better or worse, is social media and COVID-19. We have the entire world, let alone the country, that is listening. The protest, this incident, which was a murder, happened, in my opinion, which means nothing to most people, which is fine because I'm not an expert. It happened at the absolute right time. We have a transition going on in the world right now because we closed down the world. I don't agree with the fact that the same people that closed down the world and they kept just printing off money that didn't exist are the same people on the extremes are the ones that are feeding this issue. I don't like that. But all things considered, this is the absolute perfect time to come out of the first pandemic that shut down the world, not by deaths, by will,
by power,
by will, in my opinion. I'm going to use that word. We agreed to it as a public, and the government agreed to it. That's where it's will. That now we're coming back out of it, that this is the time the government is listening. And based on my very narrow understanding of history, it is the ideal time that I hope that there is change.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't care if you hate Trump in the United States of America or across the world. I think that this is the time that we will see something. Maybe call me optimistic, but I am absolutely
hopeful
and positive that we will see something that will come out of this. And I hope, again, we have 20, 30 people at a time listening to this podcast. I hope these conversations are happening around the world and around the country with this much of a optimistic and hopeful understanding where you understand, or you try to understand, both sides.
It goes back to what's on the front of your shirt. It's pour one more, light up another. Let's figure this shit out together. And at the end of the day, we all have to have that understanding of others in order to have that self-accountability to figure shit out together. And I think that's the ultimate key. And I don't know where you guys are on it or not, but I think that's the ultimate understanding of the whole second part.
It is.
Is...
Well, if Cesar says federal and local governments are disjointed, and I agree completely.
Yeah.
I think what you're saying is that it has to happen. He says a local government. I think it's a community thing, right?
Yeah.
So my thing is,
it has to start with the people.
No, but We are so let's I know Ray's listening. Maybe he tuned out at this point, but we are the United States of America by name. United States of America. There's so much value, understandably so to an extent, that the federal government can make sweeping movements on all of this shit. I got to tell you, burst your bubble, that the federal government, what's the guy's name that murdered Floyd with his knee?
Chauvin.
Never heard of the guy at a federal level. Washington, D.C. didn't even have him on the radar. That's not how this works. Welcome to the real world. This is something that I think next grant or if you want to introduce a new tax, body cams all over the United States. This is a federal thing. Everyone's got to wear a body cam. You want to see some accountability. And if you don't have a body cam on, if you want to give them 2 strikes, that's fine because of unions. Other than that, you're fucking fired. Get off the force.
Policy.
You did your thing. There's a lot of complications. Again, we talked about it, that Chauvin knew Floyd for years, but that is not the big public story. It doesn't fit the narrative. That was a murder, and I believe, based on what I've read, that they were trying to silence him so they wouldn't get in trouble. Thankfully for karma, everyone's got a camera phone, and now they're fucked. So, and now they'll be held accountable. And the goal here now is that everyone else should be on every side of the issue, in my opinion.
So, before all the shutdown with COVID started, one of our, quote unquote, Saturday traditions at the shop was after we would close down, you and I would actually hang around at the shop. We would watch live PD. And I remember there was a time where you sat there and you were watching this. You're like, you know what? This is almost something you wish every police force in the country had, was someone there.
Yeah, you
with
have
the
a camera crew,
because it holds both sides accountable, not just one side. It holds both sides accountable.
Everyone is, yeah, exactly, and that's the state of the world that we're in. Everyone needs a fucking Kardashian crew around to make sure that everyone's seeing what you're saying, and that's the sad part about it, is that
it turns
that's
into
the
a
state
he
of the
said,
world.
she said.
God bless Ryan Seacrest, because he's done very well for himself. He's a hardworking man, but he produced a show that absolutely understands that the world wants to see every goddamn second of every day of everyone. Sadly,
yeah.
When it comes to live PD and everything else, it's not that you're pro police or you're against police. It's literally, it's like, all right, so you got body cams, you pull out your cell phones, and now there's a camera crew, and you have every response. You're like, hey, I don't want to be on camera. And other people are like, hey, I'm on live PD.
I want to be on live PD.
This is the American. If anyone else in other countries watch live PD, I would love to know your opinions of it. I don't know if the country that you live in has anything like it. I encourage everyone to watch it. I still don't get it because, it's like, yeah, there is that side of a lot of people that they just want to see a car chase, right?
Yeah.
And when it's just people serving and protecting, and there's also obvious crimes, and then you're like, oh, you're going back to that car search that's been going on for 3 hours. Like, this is boring TV. That's what no one wants to talk about on the media side, is the everyday in and out. And this shit's not happening. It's phenomenal. Jenny, he says there's a lack of federal leadership, so states are on their own. So gather with good food and drink and work together for betterment for all. I agree. I think that, Jenny, and everyone else, I think that the states should be on, again, United States of America.
United.
What works for New York City doesn't work for Columbus, Ohio all the time. I think that, again, standards we're talking about, like bigger picture. I think there are some things that you can agree upon. If you're part of the United States of America, there should be some standards there. However, I think that just like the elections, I think that, farmers think differently than people that live making $1 million in the cities. I think that that's what makes this country great. I think there's something that, again, there's a mutual respect. There's an accountability. Going back to why I chose this topic, I was fooling myself that we wouldn't get down this rabbit hole.
I was hoping I was pulling for you.
It's a great podcast. We've had more viewers at the end of this. Where are we at? We're at
over 20. We're over 20.
Hours. Oh, we're at 2.5 hours. You know, I just think that people are fed up, and I think that there's not enough whiskey and cigars in the world, not enough garages in the world, that when you leave those, you go back home. You do. You solve the world's problems when you're talking to people that you care about, that you may not even know, and you have an open mind, and then you get kicked in the fucking nuts again as soon as you get another news alert on your iPhone. And it's understandable. I think that every day things are changing. And what I hope for is that as we are going through this, guys, and everyone listening, that we make a change for the better. But the biggest thing is that you keep your ears open. And I'm going to get sentimental. You keep your heart open.
Yeah.
But as soon as you find yourself living a double standard, you ask someone else to kick you in the nuts, to bring you back to reality.
And hold yourself accountable.
And I think education is the biggest thing. I'm tired of seeing people say this, that we will not rest until racism is not a thing. I will die, and I'll tell you two truths. Racism is still going to be a thing. Crime is also going to be a thing. It sucks.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the accountability comes in. That's the goal. Do not fool yourself. And this is where I love having this podcast right now, even though I didn't want to go in this rabbit hole. I'll say it for the 18th time.
I should have.
I don't know why people are listening anymore.
I should have brought
I'd
the
be
bottle.
saying this in front of, like, you guys be going to be drunk and just be like having a monologue and no audience, you know?
I should have brought the bottle of Rabbit Hole whiskey or rye that I had. That would have fit perfectly.
No, I'm tired of the fact that everyone, like, you know, the COVID vaccine is going to be the cure. Racism not going to be the cure. Or, you know, not being a thing is going to be the cure. Crime going away, not going to be the cure. No. Wake up. We have to hold people accountable and do our best based on whether you're a state, a country, a province, a town.
Yep.
You got to hold each other accountable and hold yourself accountable, because that is one of the biggest things. And with the given situation, and I think that's what upsets a lot of people, is that there is a level of holding other people accountable for their actions, but not holding themselves accountable.
Yeah.
Small percentages. And all of a sudden, that's a representation for everyone. And I think that is short-sighted. And I think that we would all benefit, in my opinion. And again, I know nothing. I think we'd all benefit if we actually truly had our eyes out for the greater good for everyone.
Yep. I think that's the perfect segue. I don't know about you. You know, I think those
Sounds
words.
like we're getting there.
I mean, but in all honesty, like, I think those words really kind of help round everything together. And I mean, I could be wrong. And Nate, do you feel the same way? Yeah. Okay.
I'm looking over my notes before we go into final.
No, you're fine. And I don't.
I've been giving final thoughts for about an hour right now.
Hey, that's kind of like the old school Steve. Final thoughts here. Where's Grimsley with the timer?
Yes, I was getting ready to say that. God damn it. Brad used to sit there and have a timer.
I appreciate everyone listening. We got over 20 people listening, which is unheard of for after 10 o'clock. Yeah, this is the representation of people that are want to talk about it.
And I think that's
They have
that's
no
the,
voice.
that's the key. You know,
Go ahead and start, Dustin.
I feel like, everyone has a voice. It's just a matter of how you use it. And I think that being said, choose wisely and think before you speak, and don't do the, think I'm cute, might delete later kind of mentality
Not going away.
with it, but sort it out. Find someone or a couple other people and have that discussion, whether it only be 5 minutes or 2 hours and 5 minutes, or whatever it may be, and really sort that out. And that whole open your mind, open your ears, and most importantly, open your heart, because you don't know what someone else is going through until you put yourself in those shoes.
Absolutely.
And that goes back to that self accountability. And until you can have that realization that you need to hold yourself accountable and hold yourself to your own standard. And if someone else's standard is higher than yours, come to that median and mutual understanding, like Shannon was saying, and figure that shit out, and get to that point of mutual understanding, sort it out. And ultimately, I really feel like it's going to help push everyone to that ultimate goal of greater good, if we can get to that point. And I feel like not as many people are still willing to do that. And I challenge anyone and everyone out there who are listening, and I feel like there are a lot of people out there who will do that.
No, I hope so.
Utilize the community for that. And that's one of the points that we put it out there. It's not just a matter of sharing what cigar you're smoking or what whiskey or drink you're drinking, whether it be, whiskey, water, vodka, what have you, is what's going on, what's on your mind. We've got that room together. Use it.
Yeah.
That's what we did a couple nights
hop
ago.
in there, light up a cigar, pour a drink, or just hop on and have a glass of water and figure it out. That's the only way we're going to figure this all out together. We're a panel of 3, call it middle-aged white men.
I'm more middle-aged than all you guys. Yeah.
But still,
You
and-
keep
Not
rubbing
the
it in.
panel, guys.
You keep rubbing it in, Steve.
but at the end of the day, the point of this
I
is
made it longer than you guys.
You had a head start.
This is true.
Well,
But at the end of the day, this
Still
is
ticking.
exactly what we're doing, is we're sorting this out. None of us are experts in this whatsoever, and we'll be the first to tell you that.
and on top of it, we have a very, in my opinion, narrow view on a lot of this stuff.
Very much so. Very much so. But I think at the same time, you have a panel up here who are all open-minded, that have and will take the moment to open our ears and listen.
Jenny says,
At least I hope that for
Yeah.
everybody.
the three of you are the future president, vice president, attorney general. I'll vote for the
Who's who?
you 3. Yeah.
I'll
Bobby
take-
Crow says Nate and Steve might be.
Yes. Thank you, Bobby.
Anyways,
thank you,
Jenny,
Bobby.
Jenny, thank
It's
you
all
very
right.
much.
I'll take
you know-
Attorney General.
We have more viewers right
But
now.
the attorney general's
Yeah,
not
we have at
really
this
in the
point.
line to be president. Never mind.
That's
regardless,
okay. That's
regardless, I'll be the first to say don't vote for any of us.
Well, I don't know.
Keep listening to the
I don't
podcast.
know.
Also, like, subscribe, and review and share.
Yeah.
Do not vote for us.
But I think the kind of going back to the first part, the whiskey was fantastic. The cigar was phenomenal.
All right, here we go.
Listen to the first part if you didn't like the second. But
We have more people listening to the second part than we did the first.
probably,
Yeah.
but that's the point of the podcast.
Guaranteed.
We've gone up since Steve started his closing remarks. We've gone up,
Yeah, your wife's listening.
and we went
Sean.
back down.
I know.
Your wife.
But
clicked
I
out.
think ultimately it really does start with that self accountability, and we've talked about it numerous times.
Absolutely.
But it's just that damn important. It really is, whether it be with everything going on right now, or just start small and then at home,
Yeah.
at work. Look at the little things that's in front of you. How can you hold yourself accountable in general, and how can you hold yourself even more accountable for what you've got going on and what you're doing?
And I think consistently is the big part of that.
Consistency.
It's not about
consistency
hot
is key.
topic. It's not about the issue at hand. It's not about the jingling keys. And I'm not belittling anything. I'm saying, like, you gotta do it day in, day out. This is a challenge to yourself, no matter what you guys are, guys or girls. I mean, it's not
betterment
when I
of
say
all.
guys, it's not male, female, anywhere in between. It's not about race. It's simply that you got to choose how you live your life, and then it's a matter of taking care of your home so that you can take care of other people.
Yeah.
Some people look at it differently.
And
Nate,
you got to take care of yourself.
I'll do my closing remarks after you, but I'm gonna do it real quick with your mouse before you do your closing remarks. I want to thank our sponsors, Tinder Box at Easton. Also, Altadis USA. Josh Bentley was on part 1, and guys, if you're tuning into part 2, we're not done yet. We're almost done. But if you guys are listening to this and you've enjoyed this conversation, share it. But Tinder Box at Easton, Romeo, Julieta, I'm gonna say it wrong, Nicaragua, Connecticut.
Other way around. Connecticut, Nicaragua.
It's
God damn
Seed
it.
before where it's going.
I'm gonna say this for
It's
the
alphabetical.
last time. The Nicaragua, Connecticut. So I think that's what it should be called.
The band is right in front of you.
Also, yeah. BS Cigar Company and Patreon.
Absolutely.
You guys make this happen. I'm so happy to have people back. And I'm not
Glad to
closing
be back.
the show yet. I think that, Jenny says part 2 is about keeping it real. Part 2 is always about nothing and everything. Both valid statements. And Nate, you'll do your closing remarks, but patreon.com/bourbonbs podcast. Guys, thank you so much for supporting it. Now that things are opening back up, we're going to get you some guys some rewards for being a part of it. And I'm looking forward to seeing what happens through the summer as we go towards episode 200. Nate, go ahead.
So it's kind of nice when you guys
Pour some more of your whiskey.
Yeah, there's not much left. There's about a Brad pour left.
All right, thank
you. You're welcome. No, and I think Bobby has you as the president, me as VP, Dustin as attorney general.
Don't vote for me as president. Absolutely not.
How about the other way around? You want to be my VP then? No. So what's nice about, when someone else is doing their closing remarks, or Steve, when you were going on your speech as well, is, it gives me time to sit here and think and write down stuff. And one of the things I'd written down before anyone had really said it as part of the closing remarks was it does start with you, but not just when it starts with you. Like, if you want others to reach your level, you have to understand and know why your levels are where they are. Like, what are your standards based on? Like, why do you hold why do you hold people to that standard? Why do you hold yourself to that standard? And I think in terms of politics, when it comes to local politics, state politics, and then federal politics, like, the people that we put in office are byproducts of us as individuals together. So if we all had a particular, if there was something that we were all doing wrong, like, for example, and I'm just throwing this out there, complete what if every single one of us were unfaithful in our relationships, and then we elect people at the local, state, or federal level that are unfaithful in their relationships? Well, don't be surprised.
Yeah.
Because that's a byproduct of who we are as whatever body you're looking at, whether it's state, local, federal, it doesn't matter. Like, who we are as people, the standards that we hold ourselves to, those are the same kind of people that we're going to put above us. Those are the same kind of people that we're going to vote for.
Yeah.
Whether right, wrong, bad, indifferent, left, right, black, white, doesn't matter. You can't sit there and have an issue in your life and then complain when your representative has that same issue. Because that goes back to the hypocrisy that you talked about, Steve. Like, you have to hold yourself accountable to an issue before you start holding others. You can't hold yourselves accountable you can't hold others accountable to an issue if you're not holding yourself accountable to that same issue.
Right.
And you have to take care of yourself first before you start to see change. So whether it's in government, whether it's in law enforcement, whether it's in military, if you want to see a change, you have to be the change. You have to. It has to start with.
It's easy to say, though.
It is easy to say, but it's easy to say, but then people actually have to have the harsh realization, and the quote unquote come to Jesus meeting. It's like, well, I want my local politicians to feel this way.
Yeah.
Well,
I got you.
I feel this way. Or if you don't feel this way, you can't expect your local leaders to feel that same way.
Right.
Or if you're talking about working in a grocery store, Dustin, like, you have a certain way that you want that store to run.
Yeah.
If your people that work under you don't feel the same way, that store is not going to run right.
Right.
If the people that are under you have a higher standard, they're going to push you to a higher standard. If you don't get to that higher standard, they're going to find someone else who will.
Yeah.
And that's how you impact change going up the ladder. It all has to start with you and your accountability, because you can't sit there and want other people to be that level and you be below them, because that's hypocrisy and bullshit.
All right. Again, appreciate everyone sticking with us. We had some very active conversation on the feed tonight, which I love. Jenny says, get your own house in order before you criticize someone else's housekeeping. Goddamn right. Also, fuck the celebrities.
Oh,
Get
amen
your
to
ass
that.
off of Twitter. Jesus Christ. I am fucking tired of all of this stuff where it's like, you are maybe you came from not much. Some of them did come from something, and you made it. I remember seeing in a high school locker room, and I grew up, younger in Chicago, so I wanted to be better at basketball than I was at baseball, because the Cubs sucked and the Bulls were amazing in the 90s.
Yeah.
However, I was better at baseball. Screwed myself when it comes to a collegiate career. There was a poster up there about the odds of making it in the NBA. Not good.
Professional sport, not good.
Not good.
No.
Right? So if you're listening to these celebrities that are good for them for giving, I'm not saying that. Good for them for believing what they believe, and they have the level of income to do something with them. The dollars that they made, $200,000 is probably roughly like $250 for me. Let's call it, right. I appreciate that. My closing remarks are simply this, is that I go back to, and I keep looking at Shannon because he actually sparked me tonight. I was trying to steer clear of it. Shannon, you are not allowed back in this garage. You're on probation.
Shame.
I didn't want to dive down this rabbit hole. I look at it as like, I appreciate the people that, and they know who they are, that challenged me to use the platform that we created over the last 2 years to do something about this. A lot of times I try to take this to a different thing, cigars, whiskey, and some sort of life topic that we don't dive into again, politics, religion, or anything that offends people.
Get in there.
Get after it, Nate.
Trying to get the last of it.
Just like everyone else in this fucking country and world, I'm tired of it. Tired of it. Tired of the hate. I think that again, let's call it like it is. The thing that sparked this thing this last weekend, that was a murder.
Absolutely.
Anyone watching that video and you think otherwise, go. You can go fuck yourself. You're delusional. And we have a bigger issue. If you dive further into that issue of that particular case, there was more to it. And I think that's the bigger picture. Human nature has showed itself in the last several years. The biggest rated podcasts, the biggest rated shows and documentary are about serial killers, they're about sexual predators, and they're about negative things.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of us that are on, call it the sidelines, are showing the human nature of fascination with the worst parts of our species. So when this shit happens, anyone that's surprised, you have been lying to yourself. And I think that's where the reason I chose accountability as the topic tonight instead of any of this other shit and just leaving it open is because I've been thinking about this. I've had interactions with people close to me, not close to me, and I'm tired of hearing the closed-minded things on both sides of the issue. And the ones that I actually listen to are the ones that have been reading articles left and right. And it's funny I say that because I was thinking like all the articles, but more accurately, left and right. And I'm tired of it. Read all of it. Educate yourself. Listen to the people. Do not close people out. You know, when it feeds your narrative of what you think is wrong in this world, read the other article.
Mm-hmm.
You can disagree with it. You can say that the people that did this are wrong. You can say people that did the other side are wrong. But remember, someone brought it up, just like business, the 80-20 law. 80% of the people you don't have to worry about. There's a top 10%
and bottom 10.
And there's a bottom 10%. There's a reason that we talk about this. This is human nature. And right now, I got to be honest, and I think that this is something that I thank everyone in the garage, everyone listening, everyone that's been contributing this. I think that there is a bottom 10% that everyone is reacting to. And I think that not everyone sees it. I think that this is something that this is the true sickness of the world, is that we react to the jingling keys of 10% of the world. Sometimes even less.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there are people out there, myself included, not too long ago, that I took offense to things when I tried to convey my opinions. I was called short-sighted, and it was by people that actually I hold their opinions very high, and I was blown back. And at first I was defensive because I've never been called that. And then as we get into this now, I'm not going to say I'm going to live my life differently in a sense that I treat people differently, because I think that I was doing all right. But I encourage and I implore everyone out there is that you're more active in it. If you hear someone that's close to you that says something that you think is wrong, you don't just rub it off. You don't just brush it off your shoulders. Whether it be a racism thing, whether it be a class thing, whether you think it's any type of discrimination, or even a public issue, you have that conversation. Sometimes you actually take a step back and you say, "Hey, can I talk to you later?" And you're like, "Yeah, cool. Everything all right? Yeah, everything's cool." And you have that private conversation. I didn't do that enough. I haven't done that enough. And that's why I took this challenge tonight, and it wasn't intentional, but I took it upon myself that having you guys back in the garage, this is the first time after the whole COVID thing that people see 3 people on this. We brought it. We did the hybrid. We got it all done. these people in the garage, people listening on the audio, people listening on the live, I hope you share this, because these are the conversations. We did not come up with any solutions other than the fact that fucking listen to each other. But I look at this as that this is what it is all about. So no matter what your stance is on any of this shit, just know, for what it's worth, I'm tired of the goddamn closed-minded bullshit that's going on. Nothing good will come of that. And I truly encourage everyone out there to have a conversation like this with people that you know and don't know. And I think that this is how it's actually going to work. I applaud the protesters. I say fuck you to the rioters and looters. I think that anyone that is anti-Trump or anti-America or anti-anything, keep listening. I will say this. I think that I'm not saying you need to vote for anyone, but stop drinking whatever fucking Kool-Aid you're drinking. Smoke a cigar, drink some whiskey, get among some friends that have different opinions. This is how we learn, and constantly stay open-minded and keep your ears open. I think that this is how this world, this country will benefit, because for every extremist on any side, there are, for one extremist, in my opinion, there are thousands of other people that are somewhere caught in the middle that are ready to talk about it and listen, and also give their opinion if you're willing to listen. And that's what this podcast is all about. So I appreciate all these guys listening in, and all these ladies listening in, and everyone else in between. Don't give up. Don't get fed up like I have. I've pushed off anger. And I hope you guys do the same. Guys, with that, thanks to our sponsors. Thank you guys for listening to this episode. I hope we continue to have great ones. If you guys have any topics you want to listen to or have a conversation about, reach out to us. And
you
guys,
be on.
Cheers. Welcome back to the garage.
Cheers,
and everyone, welcome back to the garage.
Salute.